My God, can you imagine if they ran out of Emmerdale? That would be the true tragedy of the coronavirus. How would we cope? I can't believe it's still on the air. Has anything happened yet? And in England, we will, but not in Scotland or Wales. In England, we will be allowed to go hither, thither and yon in search of beauty and Tweety birds and such. Unless people in the places that you're going to don't want your sort around there. And there's a lot of that about. Rural communities are begging tourists to stay away this weekend amid fears that they will be swamped by crowds from up the smoke, or where the smoke used to hang in the air before we were all locked inside and going nowhere. Isolated towns and villages which have largely managed to insulate themselves from the modern world and the virus are nervous of a sudden flood of city dwellers pouring into the countryside. And they're probably right to think that. I mean, city dwellers are riddled with the disease at the best of times. Unfortunately for them, in the countryside, the virus doesn't respect county lines. And unless they want to isolate themselves from the rest of the world forever, the rural parts of the kingdom are going to get it eventually. It's everywhere. And besides, presumably city folk will want to go somewhere nice, you know, like a tourist destination. I mean, they won't want to go to Hull or Slough. They'll want to go to the Lake District or Cornwall. They'll want a beach or a hill or a rolling countryside. And those places rely to a great deal on tourists to make a living. I mean, they could try and keep outsiders outside, but what are they going to do for money? Are they going to keep shut down till the virus goes away? Because that might be never. How's about never for a return to the money coming back? They can choose a lockdown strategy that might protect them in the short term, but the price they'll pay is a long-term economic death. And then they might get it anyway. I mean, you could stop people from outside getting in, but you can't stop insiders from going out and then coming back home. Still, this might all be moot. It might be a horrible weather forecast and we will all want to stay indoors anyway, wrapped up against the cold and the rain. Unfortunately, sunshine and temperatures pushing 70 degrees Fahrenheit in some places are likely to tempt hordes of Britons outdoors after 7 weeks of being cooped up at home, says the Mail Online, which elsewhere has pictures of those tempted people under the headline COVIDiots. 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and you double it and add 32 to get centigrade. So 70 times 2 is 150, and 150 plus 32 is 192. It's going to be 192 degrees centigrade this weekend. Can you believe that? And the well-known exercise guru, Boris I Can Pinch More Than an Inch Johnson, says that we can enjoy unlimited exercise from now on and permitted people to drive to beauty spots. And for those that have actually been working this past 7 weeks, that means that this weekend is the first time that they will have been allowed out for what seems like a lifetime. So the government says it's all right to go somewhere nice, while the people who live somewhere nice say, we don't want your sort round these parts. But the problem is that it's the people who work in the cities that give those that live in the countryside their comfortable standard of living. I know you won't want to hear this, but London, for instance, makes about a third of the entire income of the country. And that pays for roads in Little Dodderington, and the hospitals that Little Dodderers use, and the fire service they need when their peat fires rage out of control. I'm not saying that country folk should kiss a townie, but if the urbanites never come back, you will miss them. Because not only do townies pay huge amounts of money to come and stare at scenery, they actually prop up the whole lifestyles of the little villagers, even when they're not visiting, and might not like it if they have to pay out for something that they're not allowed to see. Still, all this might be moot. It might be a horrible long-range weather forecast and we will all want to stay indoors wrapped up against the cold and rain. Unfortunately, on Saturday, many areas dry, sunny spells, feeling rather warm, hitting up to 60 degrees Fahrenheit in the south. Scotland will see rainfall on Sunday, but parts of the southeast will see highs of 70 degrees, becoming warmer with sunny spells on Monday and Tuesday. 70 degrees on Sunday, warmer on Monday and Tuesday. Now, would you like to know the long-range weather forecast? I'll assume that the answer is no, and plough on regardless. So to the end of May. Now, they're not sure, of course, so don't plant any crops based on this, but this is their guess. For the last couple of weeks of May, it's going to start very warm, with good spells of long, fine and dry weather throughout. Following this, rain will develop across some western regions, heavy at times, becoming less warm, but temperatures remaining above average for the time of year. Towards the end of May, more settled conditions with further dry and rather warm weather. So far, so good. And the first half of June? Drier, more settled conditions, rain likely confined to the north and the northwest. And you know where that is. Temperatures tending towards warm and hot at times in the south. Hot at times? We'll take it. Oh, that's great. It feels like we've had all of summer already. Excellent work, you global warmers. Meanwhile, the charging in the opposite direction is the people who are in charge of transport in London. It's like they've taken global warming and air pollution and tried to solve all of those problems in one fell swoop. Well, there's also catastrophe and disruption everywhere you look, which is, under normal circumstances, the worst time to try anything like that. But these aren't normal times. God, the stuff that's happening, it's like being in a disaster film. Longest disaster film ever. It's even longer than 2012. By the way, Bruce emails is a very, very keen person. He's got in already. I think he got in even before the programme started. He says, why does everyone say the new normal when talking about the corona time? New normal sounds like an oxymoron to me. Normal is normal and new is new. The words should not go together, just like intelligent comment and Donald Trump. Oh, that was a long way around to that last dig, Bruce. Was it worth it? Was that an essential journey? I'm not sure. And B texts, if Boris is led by science, let's see it. What sort of science deems it okay for you to have anybody from estate agents to cleaners in your house, but not family from another house? How much longer does Boris think he can get away with mere bluff and bluster rather than honest answers at PMQs? I don't think Boris Johnson is enjoying his position anymore. That lasted a couple of weeks, tops. Oh boy, he was going to take over the world. Him and his billionaire backers, they were going to have the most smashing time. And then this comes along and ruins it all. Life, it's called, Boris. Life hit him square in the face. Almost killed him. Yeah, he ain't having fun no more. He's having about as much fun in his position as Donald Trump, his busy mate in the whole wide world, is having in America. There ain't no fun no more to those jobs. I mean, you might be able to monetize them right enough. Do you hear that Donald Trump has taken about $1 million in government money for putting government people up at the hotels that have Donald Trump's name on them? What a racket, eh? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Boris Johnson not having very much fun. I don't think PMQs is very much fun for him either anymore, because he can't just harumph full of look at that bearded trot over there. Look at that crumpled catastrophe on the opposite benches, he'll say. Or he used to, before Mr. Perfect Hair came along and started dissecting him molecule by molecule. He's this new version of the Labour leader is not the one that he's used to. Doesn't look like he's enjoying it at all. Never mind, eh? So there's massive changes to the transport system in London. And if you don't live in London, that doesn't mean to say it won't affect you personally, because London is where much of the money gets made. And if there's an impediment to making money in London, then we are all screwed regardless of where you live. And I can't see how any of this is going to work. But then, you know, I'm not a giant brain like Sadiq Khan or Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary. Grant Shapps, the well-known transport expert. I recall off the top of my head what it is he did before going into politics, but I bet it was just reading something useless at Oxford or Cambridge and then hopping straight in without having experience of anything whatsoever. I'll look it up in a break, but I betcha. Anyway, the well-known transport expert Grant Shapps is behind a wave of change to the way we get about the place. And I'll come to that in a minute. Isn't it exciting? Oh, I forgot to look up Grant Shapps. How quickly I forget. I say a thing 1 minute and forget it literally the next moment. I'm very bad at my job. Anyway, I don't need to look up Grant Shapps. Without the benefit of any knowledge whatsoever, I can confirm that Grant Shapps is a transport expert in his own mind. Parking charges in city centres could be waived to tempt commuters off trains, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, said. And he said that at the same time that London Mayor Sadiq Khan said that the government is insisting that you will be fined if you drive into town. So on the one hand, the government is saying that you must drive into town, and on the other hand, the government is insisting that you don't. Is that clear? It's as clear as anything else that's happened lately. It's just another example of that joined-up response that we have come to expect of the experts, leading us through the nightmare that this pandemic is. The nightmare that is this pandemic. Would have been a better way to say it, but, never mind. Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, told Britons that they have a civic duty to avoid public transport, after stories and pictures were published detailing how jam-packed the buses and the trains are. Did you see that video of the commuters getting off a bus in Stratford? I've never seen anything like it. I had no idea that buses held that many people. They came and they came and they came. It was like the bus was hooked up to a jumbo jet. I think they're still de-bussing now. Grant Shapps revealed that in a bid to convince people to use their cars instead of public transport, he said, "We're working with local authorities and large entertainment venues with car parks that aren't being used at the moment." And that's a good thing. But that doesn't really help cities. That would help you to park in a place that's miles away from anywhere. Because any entertainment venue with a large car park isn't going to be anywhere near where anyone is going to work. Unless they work in those entertainment venues. I mean, they're all in out-of-town places because that's where the land is cheaper. What people need is a place to park their cars near where they work. And that would be streets. And that's out. Because those streets are double yellow lined or minimal parking, 2 hour maximum, no return within 4 hours, that sort of thing. We've had decades of trying to get people to stop driving into towns, and now we are spinning around on a sixpence and charging in the opposite direction. I mean, that's part of the same reason that the high street's dying, apart from Jeff Bezos' plan to take over the world. It's the lack of a place to leave your car and go around the centre of town without fearing that it might get lifted onto the back of a council lorry and taken away. Every time I leave the car anywhere, I expect it to be lifted on the back of a council lorry and taken away. I've had that happen to me. Believe me, you do not want that happening to you. If anybody's had their car lifted in the centre of London, you probably had to do the perp walk, like I did, under Marble Arch. It's incredible. It's like being... Do you remember the way that TV programme from the 1960s used to start? Oh, God. When I started into this, I knew I wasn't going to be able to remember what the name of the thing was. He was... I think it was a rip-off of Spy versus Spy from Mad magazine, and it was some comedy American spy thing. Anyway, he used to walk down a corridor, and it used to go on and on and on. You have never seen a corridor like this. It's like that. That is actually part of the punishment, I think, if you leave a car where you shouldn't have ought to, and they take it away and they make you go down to this office in that's buried deep under Marble Arch. It must be a mile long. And it's a complete straight line. It's absolutely terrifying because you think, well, if I get halfway down this and somebody comes in the opposite direction that I don't want to meet, what am I going to do? I bet there's people still trying to navigate their way from one end of it to the other from last year. Anyway, so you must avoid public transport, while people that really need to use it are required to distance themselves from one another. But that's hard on the transport system because it has to provide a full service on a tenth of the income. How are they going to keep that going without government money? We're just going to be pouring money into an empty transport service. I mean, think of it. Only 10% of the people that normally use the tubes and the trains and the buses will be able to do so. Only 10%, assuming that they continue to provide a 100% service. So they've dropped 90% of their income. So who's going to pay for that then? They can't reduce the service because that will squash people together. And they can't afford to run a full service because where's the money going to come from? And so after a great deal of persuasion, begging, crawling across the floor, bursting into tears, the government handed £1.6 billion emergency fund to TfL to keep London moving, on the condition that Londoners would stay home and not move, and on the condition that the congestion charge be reintroduced after it was cancelled. And if they cancelled it, if you don't live in London, the congestion charge is £11.50 fine for driving into town. If you have got the temerity to want to go into town where your job is by car, then you get fined. And I'm behind that in normal times. But in order to help people out, when the virus first struck, the mayor cancelled the charge. So people that needed to come in for, work at the NHS and for caring and essential service people and so on, they weren't penalised because they couldn't come in by a train and so on, which made perfect sense then. But they're going to cancel the cancellation of that charge and increase the fine. So the government handed £1.6 billion in emergency funding to Transport for London to keep the town moving on the condition that the congestion charge be reintroduced. So the central London congestion charge is back, and it's up from £11.50 to £15. In June that'll happen. And it was a government condition of the transport network getting a bailout. But that didn't stop the usual suspects from blaming Comrade Khan and his socialist irresponsible profligacy. So the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said the congestion charge announcement was imposed on him by the government and said that the £1.1 billion grant and the £505 million loan agreed by Boris Johnson was a bad deal, a sticking plaster, and that more cash might be needed within 80 days. And I would think so. I looked it up. I've done homework. Can you believe that? TfL generated £4.5 billion from ticket sales last year. And you cut that by 90%, which is what the footfall on the transport system has lost, 90%. And what have you got? A giant hole in the finances, which you could say was caused by the government telling people to stay home and not use the services. And Transport for London claims the coronavirus crisis will lead to losses of £4 billion and is costing them 600 million quid a month. And if their income, like their passenger numbers, are down 90%, then that sounds about right. But despite that, the usual columnists and backbench Tory MPs harumphed at the spendthrift mayor over his plan to increase charges and driving into the centre of town to be more expensive, as though they can't hear the noise coming from their own front bench. Downing Street said in a statement, part of the agreement was to reintroduce the congestion charge. That's what Downing Street said. The details of how to do it are for the TfL and the mayor, they said. So they told the London mayor to reintroduce the congestion charge and then blamed him for reintroducing the congestion charge. Is this real life or am I hallucinating? So even though prominent Tories were criticising Sadiq Khan over a decision that was not his, it was the Prime Minister's, and Downing Street refused to criticise Sadiq Khan over the congestion charge return and the price rise, but it didn't matter anymore. Downing Street, regardless of what Boris Johnson and Downing Street's official spokespeople say, their minions run about flinging bile. Asked if the 30% rise was fair, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said, "We said that people should work from home where they can and avoid public transport wherever possible, including increased walking and cycling to work." They said the congestion charge is an important tool to ensure the emissions in London remain low and support better air quality. They said it only applies in the small area of central London where congestion is most acute and where the roads would come to a halt without it. Well, okay, perhaps, but the problem with that is that if, like most people, you commute from outside town, you'll have to take a train to a station and then get around London somehow. And you're not allowed to take a bike on a train. And there wouldn't be anywhere to put it if you could. And there won't be anywhere to park it if you did cycle to work. So that leaves two options. Driving to the centre of town, which they are actively working to make as hard and expensive as possible, or getting a bus or tube train, which you won't be able to do without breaking the distancing rules. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. Stephen texts on the subject of testing. The blonde genius steering the ship over in the USA, he said this week, if people want to get tested, they should get tested, but they shouldn't want to get tested. Yeah, the thing with Donald Trump is, first I was amused, now I'm petrified. I mean, it's entirely likely that he's going to lose the election in November. But it's also entirely likely that he still won't leave. I mean, it used to be like a comedy line for late-night talk show hosts in America, that he's not going to leave. They'll have to pry him out like a winkle out of its shell. But it's becoming more and more clear that he actually isn't going to leave, regardless of what the result is. When he won the last one, he still called it a rigged election, remember? I mean, if you're a person of dictatorial mien and you lose an election in some third world joke country, then you say it was a rigged election. This is the first time in history that anybody has won an election and still complained that it was rigged. So can you imagine what it's going to be like when he loses one? Oh my God, he's going to go to war with Canada or Mexico or us, or whoever just calls him next. Let's go to Stockton-on-Trent. Brian.
Okay, Nick. You okay?
Yes, Brian. I'm fine. Well, super duper. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know London much, Nick, but you do. How far are some of these people commuting in London? How far do they have to travel on the tube?
Average distance of a commute, 13 miles.
But there must be some a lot nearer, mustn't there?
Well, yeah, average, I said.
Yeah. So we're saying some of them are 1, 2 mile, 3 mile?
I wouldn't think there's very many people who live within 1 or 2 miles of the centre of town.
Oh, well, fair enough. All I'm saying
particularly
is,
people who would commute into work. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of empty properties.
Well, you know.
£1 million empty properties in Chelsea and the like.
I mean, what I was thinking was maybe he's only 2 mile, you know, and so fair enough. You know, you go more than 2.5 miles, a bit too far to walk, isn't it? You know, to keep off the tube and what have you. And what I wanted to talk about as well, Nick, was that they've just, it looks like they've got 100% antibody now. It's coming out in a couple of weeks. They're going to, you know.
You mean there's a test which appears to be accurate that can tell you whether you've had it or not?
Yeah, and they're saying it's 100% as well, aren't they? Which will be great.
Well, that's what they say. Yeah. Well,
that will be
depends. Great. It depends. Depends what they do with it. It depends how many people can get it. Depends how easy it is to take it. It depends whether you'll be able to take it on your own and get the results straight away. It depends.
It's a blood test, isn't it? The prick your finger. It's a blood test.
Right. Well, that's a lot better than a swab test, because people won't be able to do their own swab tests. They just won't.
And it's looking as though our technical side, our inventors, are going to pull us out of this, aren't they? Because we haven't mucked up other parts of it, I think.
I see a lot of people are crossing their fingers and assuming that that's going to happen, but I wouldn't be so sure. I mean, they haven't solved the flu. They haven't solved the cold. HIV still doesn't have a cure.
We don't know about this one yet, do we?
Or a vaccination.
We don't know about this one yet. And also, they're saying by August, they're thinking they've got a good chance of having a vaccine as well, sometime in August.
I think you're dreaming. Who said that?
The experts.
I don't believe there's a single... No, I very much doubt it. I think you're reading Donald Trump's Twitter feed. He keeps saying that there's going to be a cure. It's going to go like a miracle. He keeps saying it.
I heard it off an expert himself, a good source. They've said...
Well, who? Which one? Name names.
They've said...
Name the names. Who said it? Brian, who said that?
The ones who were doing it over here. Our own...
You don't know. You've got no idea.
Medical. Right. No, it's true.
You just made it up, in other words.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what they said.
Nobody can say that they're going to get a vaccination by any time. I mean, I've heard other experts say that it didn't. How many headlines in newspapers have you read that says cure for cancer? We've cured blindness. They'll say every other week it comes out. Somebody misinterprets some scientific study and leaps to the wrong conclusion.
Nick, will you? Give me a chance. They've said that, and what they're doing as well.
Who is they?
Well, I've told you that the ones who've done this one now, the antibody, are the same people. It's Russia somebody, isn't it? But anyway, what they've said is they think it's that promising, this vaccine, that they're going to make sure that they're all set to mass produce it. They even think they're mass producing it before it's been done.
Brian, the amount of drugs that are on the verge of being mass produced in case they actually work, it must be a list as long as your arm.
But why they're doing this, they're putting millions and millions into it, is because they want to get it out there as soon as possible if it is a success, the vaccine. But,
of course.
Let's get...
They're putting millions and millions into it because of the billions and billions they can make in profits for coming up with something that cures this. But, as I said, they haven't cured the flu yet. It keeps coming back every year.
When this is over, Nick, everybody's going to have to have a real good look at the health of this country, aren't they? They've said a quarter of the country is obese, diabetic.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a doctor on the television. This was on the television on morning TV about a week ago. I was very surprised what he said. He said that even a quarter of nurses are obese. A quarter of nurses, right? And I can't believe he said that, but he came out and said that. He said, we have to start showing the way ourselves to the country. And definitely this scare now, when it's over, I think it's going to help the general health of the country. And I mean, I'm a mug as well myself. I've smoked all my life, heavy smoker, But food-wise, I never touch fast food and that, you know what I mean? It's more one fault for smoking. Should have packed in years ago. But I think after this is over, Nick...
You don't touch fast food?
No, you can count on your hands how many times I've had fast food.
Well, does that include chips? Crisps?
Yeah, well...
Sweets?
I'm not...
Just pretend, everybody, that he didn't say that. It was almost like getting sent back to the 1970s. Do you mean the Chinese takeaway? I think that's probably what you mean. Yeah. Don't make me dump you, Brian. Well, I think the way you come from is a hot spot of obesity, Brian. I think the further north you get, the worse it gets. I think that's actually true. It's one of the only true things you'll hear on this show. By that silence, I assume that the person on the desk has disappeared in. Good choice. All right, 0345 6060 973. I don't know how much of that you heard, but if you heard the part that I heard, then I apologise profusely and without reservation. You can text 84850, email nicka@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Let's have Leeds. Jen.
Hiya.
Jen.
Hello. So I've been listening to you all night. I feel for you. But,
I haven't been on all night, Jen. I've only been on 40 minutes.
Well, it seemed like a lifetime.
I know, doesn't it just? Yeah, time just drags when you're out your mind. Yeah.
How are you feeling about everything?
I'm feeling
let's
just
listen to a personal
fine.
view of yours.
Personal view of mine about what?
So let's go to lockdown. Let's go back to, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago when we all started having to take it seriously. That proper lockdown moment. What was the scariest bit of that for you? What was the bit that made you go, "Oh no, this is worrying"? What happened? What made you feel like that? Because everyone has. What was yours?
What is this, a therapy session? You got?
No, I'm working through it for people that are living through it properly, and you are too. You're a human being. You must have had a feeling about it. What was it?
A feeling about what?
Lockdown, when it happened.
Yeah. Well,
What
I know that you're not
scared
supposed to say this out loud. You're not supposed to actually express this opinion by speaking it, but I'm quite enjoying it.
Okay, well that's allowed. That's okay.
Is
That's
it?
brilliant.
Because I feel that it kind of isn't allowed, because there's a lot of people that aren't enjoying it at all. But
You're allowed
while
to do
while
what
the
you
weather
feel is
is
okay.
nice, Jen, I'm quite enjoying it.
The weather's okay, and you're enjoying it, and you're allowed to
been
do
lovely.
that. I wouldn't want to
Thanks.
make you feel uncomfortable about living your
Thanks,
life
Jen.
at all.
All right.
But what I am going to ask you as well is, I'm a frontline worker.
What does that mean?
I'm a union. Okay. You just asked me what a frontline worker means.
I know I did. That was me that asked it.
Okay,
What's a
tell
frontline
me.
worker?
To you tell me.
Jen, you are full of questions. I've got no idea what kind of show you think this is, but let me ask you again. What do you do for a living?
I'm a frontline worker.
Yeah, you
I
said
work
that,
with
but that's
very
not what you do for a living.
vulnerable-
What do you do?
I think you find that I do frontline working is my living.
But what does that mean?
Exactly. What does that mean to you?
Oh my God, Jen, what do you do for a living? Tell me what you do.
I look after
Time's running
very vulnerable children.
You do what?
Very vulnerable children. I look after.
Yeah, but
I make
you
sure
look
they're
after
safe.
very vulnerable
I teach
children.
them.
Okay.
I keep them
You're a
safe.
teacher.
And I
Okay,
am
finally
not
we got
having
there.
any PPE. I haven't got any. But I go
Right,
into
well-
work on my rota and I work for that. And I do it.
In a school?
Yes, in a school.
But I thought schools were closed.
Oh, what about the key worker children? What about the EHCP children? What about all of the children that are vulnerable? No, they're not closed.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I've been going into work and looking after those children. I don't know why
All right,
you're
well-
laughing. Because these
Because
are
you
the key
called... I'm
worker
laughing, Jen,
children.
because you called me love. That's why I'm laughing. Well, okay, but what's the point of
I
this
could have
call?
called you something else, but I chose not to.
No, well, we'd have disappeared you if you'd have strayed without outside the bounds, Jen.
Answer the question.
What's the question?
Pick one. I've asked you plenty.
I don't know what your problem, Jen,
You
is, but
don't-
it's
you don't
beyond
think
my
that-
ability to help you on this show. I can't do it, but whatever it is, I hope that you get help eventually. God, what the hell was that about? Does anybody have any idea? Nice attitude, by the way. Are you sure you're in the right job? 0345 6060 973. Oh, that's right. Tony text. The show was Get Smart. That's exactly what that show was. God, that should be on TV. I was going to say I'd pay money to watch that, but no, I probably wouldn't. But in my mind, it was worth a lot. All those old shows, they're much better in your imagination than they are in real life. Because when they put them back on TV again, you think, well, nah. I'd rather watch Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or The Sopranos again. Get Smart. That was the show where he just kept walking and walking and walking and walking. And anybody that's had to go and pick their car up from the pound in Marble Arch will know exactly what I'm talking about. That's the longest corridor in the world. If you're filming something and you need a really long corridor, as for your protagonist to walk down, so a really long, scary corridor, the length of which you've never seen in your life, then it's under Marble Arch. I know where it starts, but I've got no idea where it ends. Dalgety Bay, Brian.
Evening, Nick. Thanks for taking my call.
Brian.
You made a lot of really good points about Transport for London and how it's chaos, so I'd like to offer you a possible solution.
Okay.
Why don't we segregate buses and have a red bus for people that have got the virus, a green bus for people who've had it, and an amber bus for people who haven't got it? And you let people on the buses free as long as they have a mask and a coloured wristband that matches the bus.
See, I think that maybe just masks. I mean, can't people just be made to wear masks, and then we can all get squashed in on any kind of transport we like? No?
Not easily, because then you'll spread the virus. The worst thing you can do with the virus is be inside with people that haven't got it. That is the greatest risk. Being outside is better. Inside is the worst. But if you're on a bus with everybody that's had it, right, then you're safe. If you're on a bus with everybody that's got it, you can't catch it, you've got it. We need a bus, a red bus, where people have got red wristbands, and make it free. Make the transport free, right? But you must have a mask and you must have a band. The bands are £1 on eBay or Amazon. £1.
Yeah.
You know if you've had it, or if you haven't had it, or if you have got it.
I don't like this. I don't like this idea at all. I mean, apart from anything else, why should transport be free? I mean, someone's got to pay for it.
It's not going to be for everybody. It's only the people that need it at the moment. So, given that we have £2 billion a day cost, as long as the economy's closed, and it's not going to be everybody on transport, we need to limit the transport and reduce the volume. So, if there are 3 buses and you only get on one of them, the red bus, everybody on it has got red, and the driver will be protected. That's the emergency bus for somebody who must travel and has the virus. The green bus is everybody that's had it, they can't get it again. I know that's tricky.
None of this is going to work. No, I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about this, Brian, but it's a no from me. Well, apart from anything else, if we've got 3 buses that are all doing the same timetable, going in the same direction at the same... from the same place to the same place, then we don't have enough buses, apart from anything else.
But you've only got 10% of the people that are travelling?
But there's 10% of the people that are travelling, but it doesn't mean to... But they have to travel on 100% of the ordinary buses being provided. You can't have only 10% of the buses.
But you don't have 10% of the buses. You did point out that there was the video of everybody coming off a bus, and most of them didn't have a mask, and they were crowded on. No. Now, we stop that if we segregate the buses, right? I know it's not a great idea in terms of you think segregation, but until we get a vaccine, not a vaccine, we're not going to get a vaccine, as you said, until we get a test that is instantaneous, we don't know who has it, but you know that you've had it or you haven't. Therefore, if you indicate yourself, identify your status, that's a good start. Nobody's going to get in the red bus.
So you're standing there in the rain and the cold, and you're waiting for a bus, and the wrong colour one comes up, and so what are you going to do? You're going to wait to see if the next one does arrive, or are you going to just tell the driver that, I'm clean?
Every 5 minutes there'll be a long... I mean, it's going to be 15 minutes at worst. Remember, not everybody's travelling as they used to. 10% of the traffic is now travelling. And you look at the London Tube, you've got 200 people on the station, on the platform ready to get on. You have a green carriage, a red carriage, and an amber carriage. You get on the carriage appropriately. They can be densely packed. Yeah?
No.
Because everybody can be on
okay,
the red.
apart from it's just completely unworkable, because you'll have to just trust that people will get on the right carriage, and they just won't.
Well, they're not going to get on the wrong one. You're not going to get on the red one, are you? Why would you get on the red one?
I'm not.
Yes.
I've forgotten what the colours mean, Brian. But you'll just get on whatever is more convenient. But you're saying, but everything that you're saying is based upon the idea that you can't get this disease twice, and there's no evidence to suggest that that's true.
Indeed, at the moment, but this would allow us to track us because the bans are on CCTV, and CCTV is on every bus, every train station, every platform.
Yeah.
And every shop you go into.
But they're not. They're not monitored. They only exist to provide exciting coverage for the nightly news. Nobody's actually sitting there staring at them all the time. Anyway, Brian, you'll have to rethink and resubmit your proposals first thing in the morning. Promise me you'll do that. Thanks a lot, mate. 0345 6060 973. Yeah, everybody gets to wear a different coloured badge. What does that sound like? Oh yeah, the History Channel. This says, I'm not saying the lockdown has left me bored senseless, but I'd give anything for a referendum. Referendum. Oh my God. No. Jan says, have you opened your post yet, or are you still leaving it on the floor? I'm leaving it on the floor. When the post person comes and gives me a package, I do a little happy clappy dance, because it's like birthdays and Christmas all come at once. Because now we can't go out and buy stuff in, a shop, because they don't exist anymore. Everything's got to come by post. And so the post person, if they deliver a package, then I can't stop myself. I open it straight away with my marigolds on outside and throw all of the packaging immediately into the bin. And then take whatever is inside and put it by the door with a mound of bills that keep piling up, and I just kick them into a corner. And they can sit there for about 3-4 days, something like that. You just have to assume that everything that comes through your door is riddled with the disease. And wash your hands afterwards, always. God, it's getting the food shop in, that is becoming really old. Having to wash everything that you buy in the supermarket. I mean, everything. Cardboard boxes don't take washing very well. Have you noticed? It takes longer to wash the stuff once you bought it than it took to get in your car and go to the supermarket and buy it. Still, you know me, I never complain. Let's have Portsmouth. Harry.
Oh, yes, sir. Hello, Nick.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, so far so good after seven weeks.
Yes.
You said Grant Shapps wasn't a transport expert, but he does have a private pilot licence. I mean, most of these ministers have got no idea of any job they do they? Have they?
Well, why does having a pilot's licence make you a municipal transport expert?
Well, I don't say it makes him a full expert, but he knows how
any kind of expert.
Move.
Can you drive a car?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, I can. Yes, I can drive a car.
Well, would you like to be the Secretary of State for Transport? Well, can you start Monday morning, first thing?
You get some of these people who manage transport in London, and I think they haven't got a licence themselves. There's people who get appointed to those cycling jobs in London and elsewhere, and they don't have a car, they don't have a licence, so they're rearranging other people's vehicles, and all they do is cycle themselves.
Well, that's fine. You don't have to... Okay. All right, Harry, if you say so. So he's qualified for his position because he can drive a vehicle. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you've got Chris Hoy up in Manchester. He's the cycle and walking czar. Now, that's an oxymoron, because cycling and pavements with pedestrians don't go together, yet they've given him the job up there as a cycling and walking czar.
Right, well, I don't think that walking necessarily has to be on the same stretch of tarmac as cycling.
But
you're really reaching here for outrage, Harry. You're trying to whip yourself up into a state, and even you aren't buying it.
I'm just annoyed about the congestion charge. This backdoor way of. It's the pollution, isn't it? Look, it's the wood. They should stop the barbecues and the wood burners. Have they stopped those yet?
Well, that might be a good idea.
They're worried about all these cars coming in if they don't put the congestion charge of 7 days. And yet, the biggest source of pollution is not actually the diesel cars, it's all these barbecues and wood burners.
Yeah, but that's just something you made up there, Harry.
No, I'm looking at this Independent I've got out. I saved it from Friday, 21st of February 2020.
The biggest source of pollutants is not cars, it's people having a barbecue.
Well, they're talking about this George Eustace chappie when he was Environment Secretary. I don't know whether he still is. He says the use of certain fuels means they are the biggest source of the most harmful pollutant in the UK.
What fuels?
Well, they're talking about these wood burners, burning wet wood and dry wood and coal, because they're banning it in 2023, the coal, aren't they?
There's absolutely no way that I'm prepared to believe, unless you can furnish me with evidence that that people with wood burners, as few as there are more dangerous to the air that we breathe than people driving cars and lorries and vans.
All right, but don't you think it would be a start if from now on, while they're worried about the cars, they say, no, in London, with this business charging, why don't they just say, no wood burners, no barbecues?
Right.
Simple.
Well, I thought you just told me they have said that, and it will come in shortly.
I mean a ban right now under the Emergency Powers Act.
You seem to be very exercised about this, Harry, but it doesn't. But you living in Portsmouth, it's the congestion charge to drive into the centre of London is not really going to affect you one way or another, is it?
No, they want to bring one in here. If this virus hadn't come along, it'd be coming in. Oh, they got plans. In fact, now they're using every excuse. One of the councillors is saying, "Oh, we'll have to put in a few more cycle lanes." We planned it.
Well, here's a good excuse. Here's a good excuse to stop driving so much. 50,000 people die every year from pollution.
No, 40,000 early deaths, isn't it?
Yeah, well, 50,000 depends how you measure them. But are you saying that because it's 40,000, not 50,000, we shouldn't be concerned about that?
Well, it's part of that figure of early deaths. You know, does somebody die 3 days earlier, or?
Well, so isn't that a good? Wouldn't that be a good reason to stop driving so much?
Quite possibly.
I mean, you say we should start by preventing people from having a barbecue. I think if we're going to start somewhere, then we should provide more places for people to charge their electric vehicles rather than their diesel vehicles. Oh wow! Well, let's end on that, Harry. It looks like we've forged an alliance. It's you and me against the motor vehicle. Yes, so just to be clear, you can go out and have a little walkabout if you're in England, but you must not do that if you're in Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland. I don't know about Northern Ireland. I wasn't paying attention. Lauren emails, so Nick, I'm in England and can therefore go out. I might go to Scotland or Wales and have myself a lovely little walk around some beauty spots. This says, have you heard about Trump's plan to get a vaccine by the end of the year? He's called it Operation Warp Speed. And then in a follow-up text, Operation Warp Speed. Yeah, I think you got the first one right. I think it's Operation Speed Wrap. Operation Speed Wrap is what enables the President of the United States of America to stay up all night and rage tweet at celebrities at 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's have a caller in Bournemouth. Brian.
Hello.
Brian.
Hello, Nick. Listen, you've already had 2 Brians on. I only turned the radio on just as the first Brian that I heard you were talking to, and I thought, I've just got to ring you to redeem the name. And then since I was waiting to speak to you, you had another Brian on who was another expert, and I just can't believe. Is this Comedy Hour? Is it Comedy Hour?
I think it's a Brian special, Brian. That's what we're doing.
I'm not in Bournemouth, by the way. I'm actually in London at the moment, in Ealing.
Oh my God! Can you call us back when you get to Bournemouth?
No, definitely not.
Right.
I'll lose you by then. I haven't got digital on the radio, but I've got a transport business actually, and I just can't believe what's happened in London on the roads just in the past few days.
Well, like what?
Well, just the amount of the amount of traffic now that we're all allowed back to travelling again, and like you said, we're not allowed on the tubes. We're not allowed on the so you've got everyone and their dog is on the road. And I've
noticed that there's a lot more traffic the last couple of days going by my house. A lot more traffic.
It's the M25 is back to its usual self again, isn't it? It's a car park.
Oh no, is it?
And the ozone layer, which was repairing itself, is just now going to be, in pieces again, isn't it?
I don't think it's the ozone layer. I think that's something else, isn't it? I think what we're talking about is the quality of air, which will be
quality of
fantastic.
As well. Yeah,
abysmal
I know.
Now. Abysmal.
Exactly.
What kind of a transport company do you run?
So I've got a lot of drivers out on the road delivering Amazon parcels, and we contract with. There's a lot of drivers furloughed at the moment because all the shops closed. We deliver to. I've got lorries that deliver to all the department stores and all the clothes shops and stuff. So they're all off work at the minute. But the Amazon drivers are still very, very busy.
Yeah, because everyone's busiest ever. I would think.
Yeah, they are. Everyone's just shopping online. But
I know I am. He's going to be He's going to be the world's first trillionaire, is Jeff Bezos. The world's first trillionaire.
Well, I don't know. That Elon Musk is hot on his tails. He's on it, isn't he?
No, he's way off. Way off. There's nobody else that's even close to the amount of money that Jeff Bezos has got. I mean, you'd have to go to the Saudi wealth fund to get that kind of money. It's true.
Well, I think we should all go to Saudi and wear the same. In actual fact, my sister lives in Bahrain. She's married to a Saudi, and if everyone took a leaf out of their book and we all started wearing burqas, then this virus wouldn't have spread the way it has anyway, would it? Like you said, if everyone wore a mask, then the virus wouldn't have spread around the way that it did anyway in the first place.
How much is a respirator? I know that masks are. I don't know why I'm asking you, Brian, but I think you can get a respirator for about a tenner, can't you? I think you can get a respirator for about a tenner. You could probably get a really good one for 20 quid. So let's assume that if the government.
I've got an idea for you. I've got an idea for you. I'm not going to be an expert though, because we all know that what an expert is. X is an unknown quantity, and spurt is a drip under pressure. So. It's not about being an expert, but if you could have, when Britain's Got Talent or one of them Simon Cowell shows is on, a load of people in the audience sometimes turn up with a Simon Cowell mask on, yeah? So how about if everyone had to have their own image of their own face imprinted onto a mask, and then you had breathing apparatus in it, and then people would still be able to go about their daily business without touching their actual face, but everyone would know who they are. It's an idea. It's an idea.
Keep thinking, Brian, because it's what defines you. Excellent work. Thanks a lot, mate. 0345 6060 973. So what I was saying was, there's a giant gap in the market, by the way, for people who are going to make artful face masks, because at the moment they are boring, dull. So somebody needs to come up. In fact, somebody did. I tweeted an idea of somebody came up with a way of printing actual art, onto a mask, and so people could express themselves. But it would be great if somebody could, start printing them in massive numbers so that everybody could choose how they want to look that day. Wouldn't that be great? Better would be respirators. Now, don't take my word for it, because I've got no idea what I'm talking about on this or any other subject. But I think that a mask is to stop you giving what you've got to somebody else. A respirator is to stop somebody else giving what they've got to you. So why don't we all just get a respirator, and then we can travel as close as we like to other people on the public transport? I mean, if everybody wore a respirator, we could squeeze in on the tube and the bus and the train just as much as we ever did, in complete safety. Isn't that true? And how much would a respirator cost? Let's say the government could buy every single person in the country a respirator for £10. Now, there's 40 million people who regularly go to work. Is that about right? So that would be £4,000 million. No, wait. £400 million, which is significantly cheaper than any other measure to come up with a solution to move people about the place. If we'd just all been issued a respirator, and this is not unheard of, people used to walk around with a gas mask during the Second World War. You know, the good old days, when bombs were falling from the sky and you never knew if your house was going to be there when you peeked back up out from your Nissan hut. A respirator. And then none of this would have happened. Am I hallucinating, or is... because it seems blindingly obvious to me. They're spending billions of pounds reducing the number of people that can travel on the tube and the bus and the train. 90% reduction in fares. Why? Because people can't trust that those around them will keep their distance, not breathe on them, not arrive at the station covered in disease. But if everybody wore a respirator, it wouldn't make any difference. Holy moly, I should be running this country. Lauren emails. Oh no, I've read that. Mark tweets, Glasgow's open-air pool has been reopened almost a week now and still no customers. Manager Wee Shuggy has tried all sorts to entice, including free half-time Scotch pie. Not happening. People must be terrified. Yeah, freezing to death, I think. I didn't know that Glasgow had an open-air pool. Is that true? Are you making it up? I grew up in Edinburgh. So my knowledge of Glasgow is not that great. I spent 3 months living in Glasgow relatively recently and loved it. Great place. Rains all the time, as in all the time. So even if there was an outdoor pool, it wouldn't make no difference because you'd arrive just as wet as you would be once you got in. This text says, London has nearly as many people in it as Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales put together. London is the epicentre of the wealth that drives the UK, and tragically most of the coronavirus deaths are happening there. The other home nations are watching what happens with England's ease down. England's ease down. Oh, ease down. Oh, okay, I get it. Hyphenated should be. With England's ease down, and will be adjusting accordingly. Sorry to say, but London, in these regards, are the guinea pigs. Well, it's any disease that is transmissible between people is going to affect areas with where people are living in close proximity to each other, more so than out in the sticks, obviously. But it seems equally obvious that as soon as people get let out again, when the ease down happens, that the case numbers are going to spike. You don't really need to be a scientific expert to figure that out. Just blooming obvious, isn't it? And it doesn't matter how long we wait. Not really. I mean, we could wait a year inside. Lockdown could last for another 12 months. And the virus will still be there when we come out. I just don't get the sense that anybody's really got a plan. and I'll go back to I've been saying this almost on a weekly basis. It's not like nobody knew this was coming. We've had scientific reports, we've had epidemiologists, which is a word we can all say now, and some of us can even spell. I know I can't. Epidemiologists have been bellowing about the dangers of a have I got that right? Transmissible? Of by air, by person to person, for decades. And you didn't need to read the scientific reports. You didn't need to be familiar with an epidemiologist. You didn't even need to know what that meant. All you needed to have done was go to the cinema. Film after film after film. I read a partial list of the number of films that have predicted this precise thing that we're going through. I did it either last weekend or the weekend before. It goes on forever. Practically every other film that's been made that doesn't have the name of a woman in the title or a gun on the poster has been about a disease ravaging humanity in the precise way that this is. We can't say we didn't understand the possibilities because it's been written large on the silver screen for decades now. And still we've got, it's as though it's caught us completely unawares. Exceptional times, unprecedented. That word keeps coming out over and over and over again, as though nobody had an inkling that such a thing was possible. I thought this is why we paid them the big money. I thought this is why we entrusted our future health, wealth and happiness to the politicians. I thought that isn't it their job to plan for stuff like this? And still they appear to be just making it up on the hoof. Let's put on our Factor 1000 sunblock and go to Abu Dhabi. Ash.
Hi.
Ash.
So basically, I just wanted to come on and say how glad I am that I'm not in England right now.
Really? Why is that?
Yeah, because the way that, like, looking from the outside, the UK, I've, in my opinion, have just really, they've eased the restrictions way too early, and the tube stations in London are just, it's ridiculous at the minute.
Okay, but what would be an appropriate time to ease the restrictions? What would have to happen before you thought that was a good idea?
Over here, what we've done is we've been in lockdown since like the start of March. Like my A-levels were cancelled and everything, which is what they did over there in England as well. So that's good. But they've just started to open up the malls again and open up the shopping centres and stuff. And I think, and because of the drop in cases, and although there are drops in the UK, it's still crazy high.
But how is Abu Dhabi doing better than we are? I mean, I don't really know how many people live in Abu Dhabi. I could look it up, but
I think it's about
like homework
7 million in the UAE.
So not even as many as live in London.
No, but what they're doing is there's like, I don't know if they have this in England. I'm not sure, but in the entrances of all of the shops, they've got thermal scanners, and then they've got like a maximum capacity sticker on the outside of the doors, so that so they're really
well. Shops aren't open here. We haven't opened shops yet.
But in like supermarkets.
Oh, supermarkets. That's okay. But you said shopping malls.
Yeah, so they've opened shopping malls as well, but there are like supermarkets in the shopping malls. Sorry.
Okay.
So
ordinary shops, like clothes shops and, where you get places where you get your knickknacks. Right, okay. But that doesn't seem like a smart thing to do because the virus is still there. I mean, I don't know what you would think would be an appropriate time to reopen, but assuming that it's when we defeat the virus, that might be never.
That's true. But I don't think... I don't know. I just don't think that England is ready to come out of lockdown.
The problem with all this, of course, is that how many deaths will you prevent by locking everybody up compared to how many deaths will be caused by locking everybody up? If, there's a direct correlation between a really bad economy, poverty and death, just as there is between catching a virus and death. People will still end up dead just for different things. And in times of poverty, you don't have written on your death certificate poverty. It can be all manner of things, heart attack or diabetes or malnourishment or whatever. But they don't write austerity on your death certificate. So that people assume that there is no correlation to that, but there absolutely is. We might be causing more deaths eventually by ruining the economy by everybody staying in than we save by having everybody stay in.
I get where you're coming from, but I think that there are some simple measures for preventing the spread, because once the UK come out of lockdown, which they're starting to do, it's gonna spike, right? And then there's just gonna be a massive strain again on the NHS.
As I would assume will be the case in Abu Dhabi. I mean, as soon as everybody goes out, then it will increase again. I mean, that's just obvious, isn't it? This is the big thing, the big gap in the information that's coming from the government. They want us to go back out again, and you know what? I support that, assuming that because. I mean, people from the right, this is really a bizarre position to be in, because people on the far right seem to be speaking from the same script as people on the far left, people in Sweden. I mean, Sweden is not known for its far right politics. And Sweden is the outlier in all this. They never shut down in the first place. I mean, they've taken precautions and they've closed a few things. I mean, schools for, I think, older children and universities were closed. I'm not sure they still are, but they did close them. But almost everything else stayed open. Cinemas, restaurants, cafes. I don't know if the theatre is a big thing there, but all places where people gather. Social places, they all remained open. And the difference between going forward, Sweden and, say, this country, Britain, is that in Britain, I think that you're going to have a really hard time getting people to come out of their shells and go and do the kind of things that they used to do, support the service sector, restaurants, hotels, cafes, that sort of thing, entertainment, leisure stuff. Whereas in Sweden, you won't have that same problem to persuade people to go out and do those things again, because they never stopped doing them in the first place. Ash.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well, all the best, Ash, and I hope that you enjoy Abu Dhabi, although I can't imagine how. But thanks a lot. Wear a hat and always sunscreen. Cheers, my dear. 0345 6060 973. Angus emails, since the lockdown started in March, the roads have been pretty empty as fewer people are commuting. I have even noticed the air feels fresher with less pollution and CO2. You've noticed it? Are you kidding? You go outside and you're smacked in the face with it. However, he says, I have noticed that temperatures in April were higher than March and are increasing again in May. This surely shows there is no link between CO2 emissions and higher temperatures. Those climate change believers now really have egg on their faces, says Angus, who I assume is being sarcastic. Good trolling there, Angus. Now, back under your bridge. I tell you who really does have the egg on their faces is the conspiracy theory contrail nut jobs. Those people that persuaded themselves that contrails are an evil plot against humanity by shady individuals who work out of a hollowed out volcano. Contrails in the air. You know, those the pollution that squirts out the back of a plane as it trails majestically across the sky, going to, I've got no idea. But there's an app that knows. It's just not very accurate, that's all, at least in my experience. Yeah, contrails. There ain't no contrails no more. And what's changed? Nothing. Oh, I suppose that we're all staying in, fearful of the outside. So maybe you've got a point, It's mind control. Nigel text, please, bring back Brexit. Yeah, I wonder how long it's going to be before we find that we have something else to talk about. Of course, Brexit hasn't gone away. Climate change hasn't gone away. All of these things are charging upon us. And Brexit was going to hobble the economy to begin with. I mean, they can try to persuade you until they're blue in the face that it was going to be tremendously, it was going to be great economically from day one when we leave the EU. But it wasn't. We were in for a massive economic shock just from that alone. And now this on top. God, I bet enjoy this year because there might not be another year. This might be as good as it gets. Angela tweets, it's not even a full moon, presumably in reference to some of the callers I had earlier on.
Oh, hello. Yes, hello.
Susan.
Yeah, hello. I keep saying hello. Yeah, I would suggest that it's mainly the working class, low-paid workers that have been thrown under the bus, not on the bus, second phase. Relatively low-paid workers are essentially the caretakers of the world, the hospitals, the care workers and so on, first phase. And incredulously, these people have been risking their actual lives, going about their work for an absolute pittance in many cases. And especially in comparison to the multimillionaires and celebrities of this world. And it's been an amazing eye-opener to me and many others, the huge disparity in our culture, in our world, in capitalism in its ugliest phase, has shown all of this up. You allow me to carry on talking?
It surely didn't take this to illuminate the disproportionate way that wealth is spread about society.
No. 20 years ago, I wrote an MA thesis at Goldsmiths, Psychoanalysis of Society, Celebrity as Virus, and I addressed that whole thing. You might feel yourself as a celebrity
Back up,
in
Susan.
that.
One moment, please.
No.
You did a study on celebrity as a virus. Is that what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, what does that mean?
20 years ago, Goldsmiths. Well, it's strange, but my tutor at the time said that this idea has come, and there were many sage nods among my peers at the time, two of them being priests, or no, not priests, they were men of the cloth, they were various. And there was that whole sense. No, it does mean a lot.
Other than no, it doesn't.
No, hold on. It's to do with capitalism in its more developed phase.
But what do you mean celebrity is a virus?
Where we
Susan, what do you mean that celebrity is a virus? What does that mean?
Well, in simplistic terms, because there isn't much time here, but, I wrote a 10,000-word thesis about it. But in simplistic ways, it means that we have celebrities out there where people accrue their energies to, but it's very partial. And what it's really about is capitalism, making people think that they are a part of maybe becoming rich because they recognise themselves, say, in David Beckham, being a bit thick and so on, or I could be a millionaire too, all this sort of thing. And actually is showing it up to the nth degree at the moment. The real people... hold on.
I understand a few phrases every Susan. I understand a few phrases every now and again, but you're really not making a lot of sense. Are you saying that you did this thesis as the basis for a degree?
An hour are actually risking their lives.
Susan, did you say that you did this thesis as the basis for a degree?
Houses have shown themselves to be
okay.
up.
Well, I'll assume that the answer is no. What did you get for your degree? Assuming the answer is yes. What mark did you get? What did you get?
Distinction.
2, 3, third? What does that mean?
At MA level, but I did a fashion degree originally at St Martin's, so I know what I'm talking about.
You I don't know whether you meant that to be funny, but that really was. Excellent end on that. I did a fashion degree, so I know what I'm talking about. Okay, thanks a lot, Susan. So only bits of that made any sense, not much. Caroline, I mean, there's a good case to be made against the proliferation of millionaires and billionaires. Yes. I mean, you could strive to be one. That's probably a good thing. But that once you get there, I think it seems like the more money you have, the less you want to actually contribute to the country whose direction you want to dictate. Hence, the enormous number, well, it's actually not an enormous number, the relatively small number of tax-avoiding billionaires who, from the comfort of warmer climes, want to direct this country from their bolt hole. But I don't think that's what you were talking about. You seem to be all over the place. Never mind. It was fitfully amusing. Thanks for that. 0345 6060 973. Let's see what this one is like. Bolsover, Asif.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for having me on. Cheers. Just like to offer my opinion, comments maybe. It's just I think this government has handled it all badly wrong. I'm no expert. I don't know anything about epidemiology or science apart from my GCSE science, which means nothing in this case.
You are fully qualified. You can be the head of the NHS. Can you start on Monday?
Could I really? I applied for job seekers allowance, but still haven't got that yet. So yeah, it's just I think they've handled it badly, really. And they keep saying that it makes me laugh every time I hear it. Every day they say we are following the science, and I just burst out laughing. And I'm laughing so much I can't hear the rest because I'm laughing so loud.
Well, you might want to stop laughing, Asif, because I think they're saying that in order to deflect blame from anything that goes wrong from themselves to scientists unnamed. It's not our fault. We were just following the science. That's what That's what they're laying the groundwork to avoid any blowback.
Do you think that's why they want to get Labour in on it as well, so they can all share the blame? Let's all share the blame together.
Well, I'm sure that they're lining up a lot of people to pin blame on. Scientists will be one. The Labour Party, if they don't back the government, anybody else that doesn't back the government will be considered treasonous and unhelpful. Journalists that ask difficult questions will also be labelled unhelpful. And
also,
basically, anything that Donald Trump does, we will do later. So if you want to know where we're going, just look at what he's doing.
I know, it's very sad. It's almost like the American way is the way for the UK. Hey, that rhymed. I should be a rapper.
No, you really shouldn't.
Why? Okay, I will.
That's the best advice you'll ever receive, Asif. If you want to write that down, consult it daily.
Sweden, I think, went the right way. But what do I know? They're still walking about with...
Yeah, I'm beginning to think that that's right. I think the initial response from the government, its initial thought was, let's go where Sweden has gone. Let's take it on the chin. That was the phrase that you said before Boris Johnson literally did take it on the chin and almost died from it. If we had done Sweden, then, as I said before, it would be much less difficult to restart the economy because people, once you're inside, it's difficult to get you out again. If you have been browbeaten into thinking that outside is where death lurks, then you'll not want to go. You won't want to go outside. Of course you won't. So when restaurants open their doors, who's going to walk in? Restaurants will be hoping beyond hope that once they are allowed to open again, then the tills will start ringing. I don't think so. I don't think that people are going to go back to restaurants and cafes and cinemas and theatres or any of those things. Not for ages.
Yeah, and if you take Sweden, our population is 67 million. Sweden's is 10 million, and we've had 33,900, let's just say 34,000 deaths, which is, the line about that number, you do know that, right? That it's more like 50, I reckon. The Times said it's more like 50.
Every country is counting differently, and you could call it a lie or just a different way of adding up the numbers. But
so let's just assume
probably over 30,000. I don't think in short, though, I think the point that you're going to make is that we're not really doing significantly worse than Sweden, while their internal economy...
No, I was going to say, with Sweden, they've had 24,000 and a half, haven't they, deaths? But they've got a population of 10 million, ours is 67. Actually, I don't know what I was going to say now. I should have written it all down.
Yeah, I think you've just tied yourself up into a pretzel knot there, Asif.
I was never good at maths, but,
good, no. You should take your cue from me, Asif. Learn your multiplication table. 7 sevens are 52. Any fool know that.
I think it's 49.
Thanks a lot, mate. No, I don't think so. Now you're just embarrassing yourself on national radio. 7 sevens, 52. Look it up. 0345 6060 973. Yeah, I can't remember what the latest numbers are from Sweden. It's difficult to compare because different countries can add their totals up differently. Also, different countries test more rigorously than others. And if you're going to test a lot, then you're going to find a lot of cases. If you don't test at all, then you won't come up with anybody that has the disease because even if they die in hospital from something that looks like the disease, if you don't test them, then you can't say definitively whether they've had it or not. So some countries could conceivably have 0 cases because they haven't tested anybody. And it might make them look good, but they won't actually be good. So it's difficult to compare and contrast at the moment. Also, to use flippant terminology, the game isn't over yet. We won't be able to tally up the scores for probably years because there will be the ongoing effects of the economic collapse, which will be significantly serious, perhaps even more so than the disease itself. There may be more deaths because of the collapse in the economy than are caused by this actual virus. And I do feel that we're almost in a dream at the moment. We have a sense that the bad is coming, economically speaking, but we haven't actually experienced it yet. We keep reading numbers like, the economy has taken a 5% nosedive in the first quarter, but it's likely to be, or could possibly be, a 30% nosedive in the quarter that we're in now. And that would be the biggest drop in history. I mean, you see those pictures of how it used to be in the Great Depression of the 1930s. Buddy, can you spare a dime? All that kind of stuff. People with their cars outside of their building with a sign on it with, I'll take anything for this car, I've got to eat, that kind of thing. Well, is that where we're going? Because if it looks anything like that, and the drop in the GDP and the economic performance of the country is by all accounts going to be worse than that. But if the effects are anything like that, it's going to be an absolute living nightmare. And I don't think that we've actually taken that on board yet, where we're going. And I think that one of the here's the number coming in: Swedish deaths 3,646. Which is lower, I think, per head of population than here. I mean, if we've got 30,000, then that's 10 times as many, and we've only got 6 times as many people here. So Sweden are doing better than we are, and yet they have not locked themselves indoors. They've they've not done this lock-in at all. So I'll restate my case briefly. It's much more difficult to lock people up and then persuade them to come out, despite the fact that the virus is still out there, than it is to never have locked people up in the first place and persuade them to continue to do what they were already doing, going to restaurants, the cinema, the theatre, going out to bars, just meeting people. You're spending money in the service economy, which is what we do for a living in this country, but not anymore. Hotels, all of that stuff where people congregate. We haven't been doing it at all, and it'll be difficult to get to persuade us that it's okay to do it now. But in Sweden, they never stopped doing it. So they'll be affected. Their economy will be affected because globally there will be a recession, and they're an importing, exporting country, just like everybody else. Everyone's connected. But their internal economy won't be as devastated as ours and pretty much every other country in the world, because they won't have locked themselves away. It is curious that a left-wing socialist country like Sweden is on the same page as the right-wing billionaire capitalists that have brought us Brexit and Donald Trump. What a truly bizarre place. We're walking through the fog. We've no idea what's to come before us. Well, yeah, a little bit. I think we do have an idea if we just look up what's happened when the economy has tanked before. But I don't think we want to consult those details. We'd rather pretend it's not going to happen. Caroline says, regarding the lockdown and finance, was made redundant 3 times in 4 years, told, here is £76 a week, we will pay your rent. Get on with it. So in theory, it allowed you to buy nothing, no point going out, but still possible to lead a somewhat miserable existence. Right. You got made redundant 3 times in 4 years? Well, that's either dreadfully unfortunate or you're doing work wrong. Declan emails, confused. You're a bit of an oxymoron. You recommended the coolest long hair bands from the 70s, yet you complain about not being able to get a haircut. Yeah, well, that's because when my hair grows, it doesn't make me look like a cool long-haired band from the 1970s. It makes me look like Jimmy Osmond. Not even Donny Osmond. Jimmy Osmond. Less like Mott the Hoople and Argent and Focus, and more like Gilbert O'Sullivan. Let's have a call in St John's Wood. Charlotte.
Hello.
Charlotte.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great, mate.
That's great. Yeah, I have an issue with Bojo's priorities.
An issue?
Yeah, I feel like, well, what is the key reason for easing lockdown?
Because otherwise there won't be an economy to go back to when we actually go back to the economy. Yeah.
Exactly, capitalism, agreed, right. So
not capitalism. The economy is how we pay for everything. I mean, do you like the NHS?
Of course. We don't want to repeat hyperinflation, 1922, of course. When I say capitalism, I just mean like industry, private companies, shopping malls,
the way the country makes its money, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you said capitalism as though it was all an altogether bad thing, but that's how we live.
No. I don't mean it in that way at all.
Go ahead.
Right. It's just going to back my next point. Why are we starting with the little links? Why are we starting with the school kids?
Because if the school kids don't go back to school, then the parents of those school kids won't be able to go back to work.
Okay, that is a fair point, but I feel like we should prioritise the economic crisis that we're now incurring, and I feel like primary schools are not the first step. I feel like there are schemes in place for these kids, for the frontline workers. So there's play schemes that are already open. There are other charitable services open to these school kids.
No, but frontline workers already have their children in school, as far as I'm aware. What we're trying to do now, apparently, is to open up the economy in stages so that it's not just frontline workers that are going to work. It's people who work in, wood cutting shops and people who work in lace emporia and all this other non-essential stuff that makes the world go round.
In regard to risk, I feel like
what?
Kids, if you look at it in regard to risk, so like the R rate and the risk of spreading this virus, I feel like starting off with the schools isn't the first step. Of course, that is a necessary step to be put in place at some point. But I feel like the country are aware of the necessary measures to prevent spread, and we should start with restaurants and then malls and places where it can be controlled.
How could it be controlled in a restaurant?
Well, if you're at a table and you're within 2 meters from other people and you're just with your family household, I don't see how it can spread.
Well, I don't see how a restaurant can open and cut the number of tables that they can fill by such an amount. There can't be many restaurants in the country that are so big that they could lose at least half of their tables and still operate at a profit. Besides, we've been over this, Charlotte. The reason that they're opening the schools again is so that the parents of those children can go back to work.
I agree with that, but if you look at how many kids there are in relation to how many people can actually access and use these other services in relation to the economy growing, I don't think that's the first step that we should take.
Okay, so the first step that we should take is to open the restaurants.
That should be one of the first. I'm not an economist, but I do feel that opening up things that are going to actually boost the economy are a priority. I feel like restaurants is just one of many.
I think you called in with an argument that got shot down or explained to you, but might be a better way of putting it, and then you agreed with the fact that schools should open because it allows the parents of those children to go to work. But you seem to be sticking with your initial argument, despite the fact that you now accept that there is no validity to it. But better luck next time. Thanks a lot, Charlotte. 0345 6060 973. But they're not opening the schools again for the benefit of schools or the benefit of teachers. They're not thinking that that's going to kickstart the economy. It's what opening schools enables parents to do that's going to kickstart the economy, which is to go back to work. And we're going to have to. It just seems a bit weird, as I said before, that far right-wing capitalists are on the same page as socialist Sweden. It's just weird. I mean, Donald Trump and Sweden are as with one thought on this issue. And there's not many times that you could say that about anything. Other than Donald Trump really loves Swedish women. And so does Sweden. I'm pretty sure that that's right. Restaurants. I think that I can't imagine that there's much of a future for the restaurant trade. I mean, I just can't see it. Can you? I mean, do you want to be... I'd love to be able to go out to a restaurant again. God, it'd be marvellous. And I don't eat out much, but, 3 times a year, I save up enough for Tesco points to buy myself a pizza, which I very much look forward to. But I don't think I'll be doing that much from now on until they find a cure or a vaccine or a test that tells you that you've had it already and can't get it again? Because that's the big if, isn't it? I mean, they've apparently found a test with 100% accuracy that can determine whether you have had this thing or not. I mean, I suspect that I have, and had very little, very almost unnoticeable condition that was caused by it. But I can't be certain that I've had it. I'd love to know. That'd be great. But then the next question is, can you get it again? And we've got no idea. How long would you be immune for? 3 months? 3 years? Forever? No, not a clue. So we're just stumbling forward. Yeah, I think opening the schools is a good idea. And I say that as a person who wouldn't have to stand in front of a classroom of diseased, snot-filled, coughing children. Everything is going to be tremendous and huge. It's going to be huge and tremendous and tremendously huge. Everybody says so, believe me. Scott says, you say we saw this coming. Don't most disaster films begin with the government ignoring a scientist? Why, yes, they do. I found that list of disaster films. You know, when the government says that these are unprecedented times and nobody could possibly have seen this coming, they're lying about that. They were warned last year of the grave consequences of a future pandemic, and that was a super secret briefing that they'd rather we didn't even know about, let alone read. And even if they didn't read that briefing, maybe it was too long, so they thought, too long, didn't read. I'll wait for the film to come out. Well, it has, over and over again. There's The Seventh Seal, the Ingmar Bergman classic that no one has ever seen. There's I Am Legend, the Will Smith film about a plague wiping out all of humanity. Or they could have watched The Andromeda Strain. You've probably seen that one. Or how about Dawn of the Dead? Or a film literally called Outbreak. Or the one literally called Contagion. Clues are in the titles. And then there was 12 Monkeys. The one with Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis in, which is on TV all the time. Or Resident Evil. Or The Stand. Stephen King's the novel, the film by Stephen King. Or 28 Days Later. Or 28 Weeks Later. Or The Carriers, about the actual carriers of a virus. Or Rise of the Planet of the Apes, World War Z, or the TV series Containment, or the Japanese film Pandemic. There's a South Korean film called Flu. I mean, is that enough to be going along with? You could binge watch that from now until the end of time. Oh, but nobody saw it coming, apart from everybody in Hollywood. 0345 6060 973. Here's Ealing, Harry.
Hello there, Nick. How are you doing?
Hello there. Good, thanks.
Hello. My question was about education and the fact that schools, I know they're going to go back and they're going to start opening in the early next month, was it, in June? But the thing is,
June the 1st, yeah.
June the 1st, yeah. So my question was, they say they're going to halve the school sizes to 15. Now, if there's a class of 30, where are the other 15 students going to go? And the thing is, that then means half the school is completely vanished. So,
yes, this is the story. Safe social distancing can be done in schools. A top minister insisted, as the government set itself up for a major row with education unions. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis said it was vital that pupils were back in classrooms within weeks, both to allow key workers to keep working to save lives from coronavirus and to prevent youngsters missing out on vital learning. Ministers have drawn up plans for a phased return after the summer half-term, with junior classes potentially going back from June the 1st. Teachers are understandably concerned. Their main concern, teachers, is over whether schools can safely enact social distancing, even with class sizes limited to 15 or fewer pupils. Well, I don't know how they're going to do that. I mean, how many kids in a class these days? It must be double that, at least.
It's 30. It's roughly about 30. So the thing is, half the school then is not going to be attending. So what's going to happen with those students, you know? So it hasn't really been thought out it hasn't been thought out very well, according to my understanding.
Yeah, well, I think we can just take it for granted that nothing about any of this has been thought out very well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's just one of those things where you think, you know, you put your finger on your head and you think, are these people actually running the people who are running the country.
Harry, you obviously haven't been listening to the adverts. Don't put your finger on your head.
I know, I shouldn't be doing that, should I? And by the
Are
way,
you a teacher?
No, I'm not. I'm a flight attendant, actually.
A flight attendant? Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, blimey, what's the prospect of you actually returning to work?
I don't know. Yeah, no.
That's going to be an industry that's hit like restaurants, isn't it? All the service industries. It's going to be really hard to get people to go back out again. Once you've been locked up and made to be fearful for what's outside, I think it's going to be tough to get people to go back outside.
I don't think there's going to be any holidays this year, let's face it.
I know. Never mind about a staycation. I think people will be having a no-cation. That's what I've got planned.
A no-flycation, I think it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, the best of luck. Thanks a lot, Harry. 0345 6060 973. Dave emails, shopping is awkward now. If you cut in front of somebody in the aisle and apologise, thanks to masks, they can't see you raise a smile. They just see you pulling a Clint Eastwood eyes face. I'm predicting that Professor Chris Whitty will win next year's Strictly Come Dancing and Dr. Jenny Harries will win Celebrity Big Brother. Okay. Sure, why not? Here's Windsor. Hannah.
Oh, hi. Am I on?
Hannah. It sounds like you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, wow. Hi. First of all, before I continue, thanks to my amazing friend Vaninda, who introduced me to LBC, sadly, many years ago. Yeah, well, yes and no. You can imagine at the time when she introduced me to this.
I can't. But anyway.
You probably can. Anyway.
But I can't.
So I have... I got addicted. And
you got addicted, right.
Yeah.
You're on about 3 or 4 hours a day now, man, but you can handle it.
Yeah, and all the presenters are also, you do get
I know.
the vibes. Yeah.
Okay then.
Say Steve Allen.
If you say so. Yeah. Anyway, Hannah.
Anyway, yeah. So many. My point was, I actually do think they do need to go back to school.
Yeah, of course they do.
As soon as, obviously they can.
I mean, we're not at the toppermost of the world's educational league as it is. Our kids can't afford to fall behind.
No, clearly. And but moreover, anyway, my younger sister, who lives in Stockholm, who has 3 under 10s, and they have not gone through what we've gone through, and it's been absolutely fine there.
Well, absolutely fine seems to be stretching it a bit. What is she saying the experience is like?
They've carried on perfectly well, in the sense she's got... They carry... she's got them to the primary school, that they've just actually been normal. They've been sensible.
Well, when all the results are in, then we might find that Sweden has done the right thing, and the whole of the rest of the world has engaged in the biggest overreaction in history.
Yeah,
because after all, the disease is taking a very few number of people. The most of which have underlying complications and could quite possibly have died in a lot of cases soon anyway. So we're ruining the economy for decades and decades to come, ruining the future of all young people in order to prolong the lives of those who were at the end of life's conveyor belt anyway. That may be what historians write up about this, assuming that things remain more or less as they are now, because if they do, then it looks like Sweden's got it right and everybody else has got it wrong.
Well, what's very interesting, Nick, is, we have Zoom calls, as you do now, with my half-sister in Sweden, and also I'm originally from Czech Republic, so you do actually see differences with two countries, how they've all reacted. Sweden has, again, carried on completely normally. Czechia just closed the borders and have had zero, very, very low deaths.
Well, yeah, it's difficult to tell at this point and compare and contrast between countries, because all countries are releasing figures that are not directly comparable. They're not counting certain things. They're not, like we, for the longest time, weren't counting deaths outside of hospital. They were doing that, I assume, because they wanted to keep the numbers down that they were announcing. So they discounted deaths that happened outside of hospital, which didn't make any sense at all, because a lot of a great percentage were happening in care homes, which they weren't even counting.
Yeah.
And other countries are the same. So it's difficult to make a direct comparison. But it seems logical to me that if Sweden isn't getting a higher number of deaths per head of population than we are, and they're not ruining their internal economy as we are, then they've got it right and we've got it wrong.
Absolutely. And I think, there is... We can't... How can one, compare leadership?
Well, you can do that. You'd have to translate from Swedish into English for us to make a direct comparison, but I'm assuming that it wouldn't reflect well on our dear leader.
Absolutely.
And as though by magic I have statistics to back up my thoughts that Sweden might have it right and we got it wrong. These are increased number of deaths over the yearly average. So Sweden has seen 27% more deaths than normal during the course of this outbreak. 27% more in Sweden, and that's a bad number. But it's not as bad as our number, which is 67%. All of this lockdown, all of this economic misery that we are storing up to last for the rest of all of our lives. And Sweden has not engaged in any of this. They didn't lock down at all. I mean, it hasn't been a free-for-all. They have been distancing themselves and trusting that the people trust the government to do the best things by them. There's an enormous amount of civic investment, like emotional investment in the government by its citizens, as opposed to in this country where everybody's moaning all the time. All the time. And we don't trust any of them at all, not as far as we could throw them. But in trusting Sweden, they've seen 27% more deaths than normal during the outbreak and have not locked down, still going out and doing hot Swedish things to each other. And in this country, not 27%, 67% higher than normal, the largest increase in Western Europe. So, unless they are fiddling the statistics, then you'd have to say that we've got it wrong and Sweden's got it right. Although there are other countries that have done, on the face of it, better, like their immediate neighbours, for instance, Denmark, Norway, Finland. In Norway and Finland, they've seen no increased deaths. The figure is 0. I mean, they've had deaths from this virus, but not an increase over the average. That's remarkable. So if you compare Sweden and Norway, for instance, then it looks like Norway's got it good. But the game isn't over. And the full results are not in yet. Because in a couple of years' time, will Norway, having shut down its internal economy, on top of the global turmoil, cause more misery and potentially deaths than the virus has caused? Whereas the same might not be the case, I would suggest, in Sweden, because they did not shut down their internal economy. The shops stayed open. People continued to go out and will not be need persuading to go out once the lockdown ends, because they didn't lock down in the first place. It's a complicated issue. Edinburgh, Eric.
Hi, Nick.
Eric.
Yeah, I was going to mention Sweden, but you've already said it. Really, you've got to make a comparison in say, a year's time, because other countries are going to come out of their lockdown, so you can only make a comparison in a year or so within its neighbours. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then you could also say you can only make it in 10 years once the full effects of the recession have been felt, or it could be never. But now is a fairly good indication. In 6 months, it might be even clearer.
Yes, but obviously the other countries have just come out of lockdown, where Sweden hasn't. So their deaths may increase.
Sweden never locked down in the first place. They didn't have a lockdown.
No, that's right, yeah. So I'm trying to say you can only make a comparison over a long period, not now.
Well, yes and no. I mean, if we can agree on some way of counting deaths, that they are all extra deaths, then you can make a comparison now. And the comparison is extra deaths than normal during the course of this outbreak. Sweden has seen 27% more. And that's through all causes of death. That's extra deaths. 27% more in Sweden, 67% more in Britain. I think the figures are, I think the results are in that regard. But anyway.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Sweden may not go through a second wave, because they could get immunity shortly. So they might not get a second wave, but other countries will.
Well, we don't know if you get immunity. We don't even know that.
No. Anyway, back to my other point, face masks.
Yeah.
I was listening to a professor last night, and she said the complete opposite, saying they're of no use.
Well, it depends what you mean by no use.
What you could be doing if you've got the virus is rebreathing it, and the concentration of the virus would go directly into your lungs, which is the last place you want it.
Yeah. But presumably, if you're breathing it out, it's in your lungs. That's where it resides, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm only going on what she said. She said if you're rebreathing it, the concentration would be worse for your lungs.
Well, that could quite possibly be true, yeah. But if everybody wore a mask, but if everybody wore a mask, then it would be less likely that you pass it on to somebody in the first place. Well, it might not protect you, but it might protect others from what you've got.
Airborne, it's spread by droplets.
Yeah, I know.
So there's no need for a mask, and she also said there's no need for social distancing.
Well, where did you hear this expert speak?
Online.
Online?
She's a scientist.
Oh, God. Well, warning bells are ringing in my mind.
The only thing is, scientists are saying it's so contradictory. One says one thing, the other says the complete opposite. So what do you believe?
Yeah. I would believe the consensus. I'd believe whatever makes most sense to you, Eric. And I wish you the best in trying to untangle that mess. 0345 6060 973. Oh, I mentioned earlier on that I do a podcast with Karen McGiffin. Karen McGiffin is a very funny person. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. And with her, I do a weekly podcast called What's Your Problem with Nick and Carol, in which we try to solve your problems without laughing too much, and usually fail. If you would like us to have a go at your problem, then you should email nickandcarol@global.com. That's nickandcarol@global.com. And the podcast is called What's Your Problem with Nick and Carol? You can find it on Global Player, the app that we do here. You can download Global Player from your app store, and it's one of the podcasts that you'll find there. If you don't do apps, then ask for it by name on an internet near you. What's your problem with Nick and Carol? Meanwhile, here's a call in Feltham. Ian.
Hello, Nick. I'm phoning about the 1.6 billion bailout of TfL that the mayor has asked for, and he's got.
Yes.
It's not a bailout if it's a loan, is it? It's a loan. But everyone's calling it a bailout.
I think 500 million is the loan part. I think 1.1 billion is just here you go.
I didn't know that. Anyway, well, if the right wing hysteria who hate the mayor could get Boris to hand back the 46 million that he took off TfL for that bridge swindle, that'd be a start, wouldn't it?
Bridge swindle. I don't think you could call it a swindle.
Have you seen that bridge? I haven't seen it.
It was a failed project.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
I would like to have seen that bridge. No, well, I don't think that there's any suggestion of impropriety on anybody's part regarding the bridge. I think there was, actually. That's in the Architecture Today magazine who exposed it. I think there was some sort of impropriety suggested. I very much doubt that that's the case. I think what they may have been referring to was that there was no... I don't think there was a tender, was there? I don't think they had a competition to get people to design the bridge. I think they just gave it to Thomas Heatherwick, which, and if he agreed to work on it, we should be, as a nation, on our knees grateful, because he is one of the shining stars in the design firmament of this country. And I think that would have been a great thing for London to have that garden bridge. I was fully looking forward to that. But people looked at it and thought, oh, well, no, we can't afford that. Even in the good times, even as they kept crowing about us being the fifth largest economy in the world, even in the good times we couldn't blooming well afford anything. What's the point of being so rich if there's no actual money for anything in this country? Well, of course, there is even less now. Billions and billions less, probably trillions when the full accounting is complete. But, I don't think that 46 million to return that from the Garden Bridge project would make a slight bit of difference one way or the other, Ian.
What about...
We're talking billions now. Oh, there you are.
Hello? You there, Nick?
I am. Are you there?
Yeah. What about the chief of TfL, £500,000 a year salary? Perhaps he should take a pay cut. And the other 15 executives who get over £100,000 a year, perhaps if they took a 50% pay cut, that could help.
Well, it might help a little bit. It might help people to feel better about them. That is not a novel suggestion. So, yes. Would you be prepared to take a pay cut, Ian?
Well, I'm retired, so I think it'll be a pay cut of very little.
Right, well, every little counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, Ian. 0345 6060 973. Kate emails, did you see Trump with his Live and Let Die music playing in the background of a recent filming? God, that was priceless. There's no way that was accidental. Somebody, a disgruntled employee, I bet, put Guns N' Roses' version of Live and Let Die on in the background as Donald Trump was touring a mask factory, I think it was, while refusing to wear a mask, having said previously that he was going to. And then when he was asked about not wearing a mask by a journalist, said, oh, I was wearing a mask. It was a photo opportunity. There were cameras there. We could see you. You weren't wearing a mask, you giant orange numpty. I was totally wearing a mask. I'm sorry if you couldn't see that. He is losing what's left of his tiny mind. If you see, he's just given up trying to make sense anymore. He just writes Obamagate in all caps with exclamation marks. It's like when the speed really kicks in, he just goes berserk on his phone and starts just tweeting out meaningless nonsense. Obamagate. And a journalist asked him what that means. What has Obama done? Because he hasn't actually illuminated as to what it is that he's talking about. He's just alighted on this phrase, and Fox News have just filled in the gaps for him. It's an organisation that just basically holds a megaphone up to Donald Trump. It's like Pravda. It's like the state's broadcaster, Fox News. And they're just colouring in what they think that he's talking about. But Donald Trump doesn't appear to have any clue. He's just saying Obamagate, which is, going to thrill his fans because they can't stand Barack Hussein Obama. But it's meaningless. When asked by a reporter what he means by Obamagate, what is it that Obama has done, his response was, oh, you know better than anybody. He's losing his mind. He really is. And there's more and more people now. It used to just be a late night talk show host called Bill Maher, who does an excellent show. It used to be just him who was saying, you know what, even if Donald Trump loses the election, he's still not going to go. And people were poo-pooing the idea. Oh, rule of law and the Constitution and all of that. Forget it. There's more and more people who are thinking now, you know what, this guy isn't actually going to leave. I don't think he will. Sadly, we in this country have tied our cart to that donkey. So we'll be going down with him. Michelle emails, if the reason that schools are reopening is so that parents can go back to work, why is it only reception, year 1 and year 6 going back? It's not all grades going back on June the 1st, so parents still can't go to work. Yes, they're going to open in stages, aren't they? These are the facts, Jack. Under the government's plans, children in reception, year 1 and year 6, could start to go back to school as early as June the 1st. Children will be placed in small classes and rigorous procedures are being put in place to limit the spread of the virus. Well, they're going to bring back the cane. Ministers hope to get all primary children back for a month before the summer holidays. Secondary pupils in years 10 and 12, who have GCSE and A-level exams next year, will go back part-time to allow for catch-up sessions with tutors. So that is what constitutes a plan. How are they going to do that? How are they going to get kids to stay away from each other? Impossible. How will they do that? But this virus seems to bounce off most children. I know there have been some cases just recently of horrible complications in young people, but hardly any at all. Very, very tiny numbers. Mostly it just bounces off them, but it doesn't prevent them from spreading it around. So, blimey, I wouldn't want to be up the front trying to teach a bunch of coughing, sneezing, disease-ridden kids. God, it'd be awful. Murcia in Spain. Bob.
It is. Bob. How are you, Nick?
Good, thanks.
You okay, yeah? I just
very well.
Listening to you. And I'm wondering why the head teachers don't take control of the schools to say when they come back, they know the teachers, plan it, they know the children. They can plan it. It would be quite simple, I'd have thought, to do that.
Well, wouldn't it be better to have that sort of thing organised centrally?
No, I think the head teachers would know more. I really do.
No,
and also,
I think it'd be more likely to be swayed by vested interests as a head teacher than as a central, than coming as a central diktat.
Yeah,
I think you've got to have central planning with this sort of thing. You must do. I mean, all schools should open at the same time or to some sort of plan, not just randomly, depending on how they feel.
Teachers. Yeah, and on another thought there. If there's 25% of the care homes residents have died through coronavirus, what's the other 75 people died of? 75%. There's nobody looking into that.
Well, 100% of people in care homes haven't died.
No, out of the people that have died, 75% of them have been coronavirus. So the other 75 have died of something else.
Well, old age, I would imagine. I mean, if you're in a care home, then you're probably likely to be, at the end of the conveyor belt of life yourself.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Very well.
I mean, death would not be unexpected once you reach a certain age.
No, you can't get around the Christmas tree a few times, can you? You can't keep doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And back to the schools bit, if the unions are so strong about them not going back, why do not the unions bring them out on strike and make an official strike where the unions have to pay them? And they won't be out for more than 3 days because the unions haven't got the money.
Okay, I think there's problems enough in society without encouraging a general strike. But, yeah. So what's life like in Spain at the moment, Bob?
It's lovely, actually. They've opened up now. I went for a drink yesterday with my 5 of us, 5 old pensioners. We all sat down, and at about 6 pints apiece and struggled home. It was good. It was good. We saved the world again, did all the things to saving the world. It was good.
Well, on behalf of the rest of the population, then we're very, very grateful, Bob. Keep up the good work. Thanks a lot, mate. 0345 6060 973. Trev texts, I've heard that Dyson has made a vaccine. Oh. What happened to all those excellent ventilators that Dyson was going to munificently supply to us? What happened to them? I was very much looking forward to them. I bet some of them would come in purple. Caroline says, I was in my local supermarket having a chat with the guy at the till as I paid. He was telling me about when one shopper took exception to being asked by a member of staff to respect the social distancing guidelines. Apparently the shopper then started swearing and saying that no one was going to tell him. No one was going to tell him what to do. He then ripped open a packet of breakfast cereal and poured it over the staff member. I asked the checkout guy if the customer then followed it with some milk. I hope he wasn't just a serial offender. Oh, my God, Carolyn. If only I'd known that that's where that was going, I wouldn't have started that journey in the first place. I've been duped. A listener with material is Romford. Michael.
Hi, Nick. First-time caller.
Michael.
Thank you for taking my call.
Good man. Welcome along.
Good to be here. Just a few things regarding children going back to school. You're absolutely right when you talk about children. You can't keep them apart. And particularly primary school children, they're licking rulers, they're picking their nose, fingers in the mouth, constantly cuddling each other. Teachers.
Oh, my God.
It wouldn't be... That's not going to work.
A little too graphic there, Michael. A little bit too graphic.
Sorry,
you might as well have sent me a picture.
Well, sorry, that's reality. That's what it's like in a primary school. The way the government are going about it with regards 3 year groups, so reception year 1 and year 6, in my experience in school, in a primary school, probably rule of thumb, 50% of children who come to the school have siblings. So if you've got a child in year 1, they're more than likely got a child in another year group, so perhaps year 3 or year 4 or year 5. So the parents, you send one child to school, but you've got to stay home to look after the other one. So it's not, if you've got 200 children in primary school, you're only hitting 3 year groups. So potentially you've only got 100 children. Of those 100 children, 50 of them have got siblings, so they're not going to come to school. So now you're down to 50 children. And what we're picking up is a lot of parents are not going to send them in, purely because they don't think it's safe.
Yes.
So what the government should have done is not just pick those 3 year groups, but chose the children or the families who have siblings. So if you've got a year 1 child and a year 4 child, they can come back to school. And then that really does free up the parents to go to work. And with regards to going to work...
I suppose so, but, I mean, they're talking about increasing the number of children who go back in increments, so probably better to do it that way, don't you think, than to just have everybody all back at the same time?
Well, there's not a lot of time. Between the 1st of June and summer holidays, there's only 7 weeks. So if they say, OK, these 3 year groups go back on the 1st of June, and in another 2 or 3 weeks' time we'll start another 2 or 3 year groups, the academic year is almost finished. Before you get them
let's extend the academic year. Why on earth do they need a holiday? They've just had one. This is a holiday for kids.
Well, you can argue that, older teachers I know are all working from home. They're all producing work. They're online. We phone every household every week to talk to the parents, make sure they're safe. We're still doing home visits with people.
I understand all of that, but you know.
But
why
well,
teachers themselves don't need. Hang on a minute. Teachers themselves don't need 7 weeks holiday. Like 2 weeks is fine, particularly if you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, nobody's going anywhere, are they? You can't go away on a holiday, so you're going to be stuck indoors regardless.
Yep.
So
that's true as well.
I don't see why can't we cancel summer holidays?
Okay. What about all the teaching assistants? I mean, every class in my school's got at least one teaching assistant, and they're only paid for term time only. So they don't get, they're not paid for working during holidays. Okay.
Well, no, but it would make holiday a term time. That's what I'm saying. It's like cancel the holidays, make it term time, make up the what we've lost so far.
Yeah, I'm not against that. I'm just putting a different argument. And so, and going back to these holidays, as it stands at the moment, the children get 13 weeks holiday time a year, so 6 weeks during the summer, at Christmas, Easter, half terms, etc. Right. And the parents, there's not an issue with all the children staying at home. So somehow the parents manage to cover those 13 weeks, and there's not many people, especially in the education industry, most people don't get 13 weeks holiday a year. So whether it's grandparents or friends or relatives, they manage it.
Well, that is a good point. Yes. I have no answer to that, but yes, that is true. Yeah. What happens on the other times when the kids are at home on these giant holidays that they get, the parents still seem to be able to go to work. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot. Perth's biggest tweets. Would you follow the scientists who have dedicated their careers to the subject, or a man who wants to inject you with bleach? Not just bleach. Lemony Fresh toilet cleaner. It's fantastic. Everybody should have some. You should drink it, chug it. Very refreshing. Or you could dry it out and snort it. Or you could pop a urinal cake. Any of these things will do. Carl texts, if everybody learns to stilt walk and or ride penny farthings, I think the commute into London would be much more manageable. Yeah, and funny. Don't forget the funny. Sue.
Hi, Nick.
Is that Gray's Inn or just Gray's?
Oh, no, it's Gray's in Essex.
Oh, Gray's Inn, Essex. Yes.
People turn their nose up at Gray's in Essex, but it's lovely. I love it. It's my little piece of paradise overlooking
Well, now, wait a minute.
Estuary.
One moment. We're getting conflicting information here. Why do people turn their nose up at it?
Well, apparently it's full of crime, but I have never seen any. And like I say, I look over the estuary, and it's nice and peaceful where I live.
Now, when you say you have never seen any crime, Sue, are you actually responsible for any crime?
No, I'm not. I'm a good girl.
Is that a yes?
No.
Okay, then.
Well, I just wanted to tell you about, I had a lockdown birthday yesterday, my first lockdown birthday. I've moved on from...
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, 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 yeah. I miss all those little things you had. You're not allowed to do them anymore. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay, well, I've moved from the 45 to 54 age bracket now, so I'm 55. And it was just, it was a great birthday. Didn't have to go out, didn't have to be in a pub and jostle with other people and listen to music that I don't like because they're playing a load of rubbish. And I had presents delivered to me. I was very lucky. And I know you're a big Bowie fan. And I just wondered, I got strange fascination. Apparently, the definitive story of David Bowie, and I wondered if you'd read it.
I have not.
Mm-hmm. Well,
let me ask you about this, Sue. Is it a book?
It is a book indeed.
Then I haven't read it.
Well, I haven't read it yet either, so maybe I'll give a review. But it's got a startling review on the back by Mark Almond. Who knew? That says fascinating portrait of a fascinating artist. So there you go. I can't think of a better recommendation. I have a David Bowie story for you.
I can think of loads better, but never mind.
Okay, I've got a quick David Bowie story for you, if that's all right.
Well, now, how quick is quick?
Very quick, I promise. My sister worked at the BBC in the early 90s and arranged a taxi for him and said, Mr. Bowie, your taxi is ready. And he said to her, thank you for being a charming receptionist. Please call me David, and kissed her hand. And I said to her, don't ever wash that hand again. Can you imagine in these times? And I was so furious because I've been a fan since whenever, and she was never particularly keen on him. How unfair is that?
Well, very, but never meet your heroes because you don't want to be disappointed.
No,
Leave them forever on a pedestal. That's excellent advice there, Sue. What?
Did you ever meet him?
No. I saw him many, many times live, like close enough to reach out and touch, but no, I never spoke to him, no.
Okay. Well, thank you for your show. It's fantastic. I listen to you every week. You're amazing.
Well,
Thank you.
That's very nice of you to say so, Sue. Thanks for that. And happy birthday.
Take care. Keep safe from work.
Ta-da.
Everyone seems to
All
be
right.
fine.
Yeah, exactly. 0345 6060 973. This says, I work in the restaurant hospitality industry. We have been told that we are waiting until the government gives us the go-ahead to open, ironically on our company's Independence Day on the 4th of July 2020. Our company's Independence or country's Independence Day? Don't know. Companies. How does a company have an Independence Day? I'm mystified. Anyway, carrying on. Myself and my partner got the tape measure out earlier, and we measured out 2 meters apart to see how restaurants or bars would operate. Impossible, he or she or it says. I can't see how they're going to do that at all. I mean, restaurants barely get by now. I mean, the amount of restaurants that close because they just can't make ends meet is enormous. Restaurant closures are huge. So how will they be able to, say, cut their tables by 2, by a factor of 2, like in half, in other words, and still make a profit? How could they possibly do that? And how can you distance yourself from your wait person, or the person that takes your coat when you go in, or the person who clears the table, or any of these things? I just don't get it. Pete says the Swedish are more socially responsible than us, therefore more likely to be concerned not to pass the virus to others. Yes, there is truth in that. However, don't you think that we've done very well? I mean, you could have, before this happened, have been presented with this conundrum. What would people do in this country if they had to give up their work, stay inside? They were told to stay inside for at least 7 weeks. They couldn't go to the shops. They couldn't go to bars or restaurants. They weren't allowed out to the cinema. The gyms were shut. Shopping malls were closed. They weren't even allowed on public transport. None of this stuff. They weren't allowed to go to a beach or a park or anything like this. What would your prediction have been as to how we would react? Well, my prediction would have been that people would have been throwing scaffolding poles through McDonald's windows in about 10 seconds. And none of that happened. And what actually happened was the opposite to what you might have expected. People got a little bit more considerate. Hard to believe, but it's true. A little bit more kind and caring and socially responsible. It's almost like we became a bit more Swedish. We still have great reservations about trusting the government, but with good reason. I mean, obviously. And so we are less invested in our leaders than the Swedish, who have made a folk hero of the man who presents them with their daily diet of information, their top epidemiologist. People are getting tattoos of his face. He's a very Swedish person, quiet, unassuming, not flashy or show-offy or any of those things. Kind of dry and dull, by all accounts. His delivery, a little bit boring. But a little bit boring might be just precisely what people need right now. Just delivering the facts, not putting a spin on it, not telling people about impossible cures or how everything's going to disappear. It'll be like a miracle. None of that. And people think, yeah, that's right. You treat me like an adult, talking to me like a real grown-up, and I'm going to take this on board. Take on board the fact that we are in danger, regardless of what we do, really. I mean, the only way to make sure that you don't get this virus is to never leave the house again, never interact with another human being, don't get mail, don't get anything posted to you, grow your own food. None of this is really feasible unless you live on a farm in Upper Hill in the middle of Wales. So by just living a life or restarting your life at some point in the future means that you will be putting yourself at risk of getting this thing, which by many scientists' beliefs is never going to leave. It's never going to be a world free of it. God, I mean, just think of this. What are we going to do when or if the next spike comes? Because as you've probably read, the worst spike when the Spanish flu was among us was the second one, not the first. Much more deadly second spike. I mean, people tried to protect themselves from it, and then when they eventually emerged, probably in combination with the onset of winter, it was worse than the first time around. I mean, what are we going to do if this happens again in, say, December? Are we going to lock down for another 2 months? God, can you imagine? In the space of a couple of weeks, we've done more damage to the economy than at any time in history. Can you imagine if we had to go through this again? It's inconceivable. So I would imagine that if it does happen again, there's not really going to be this lockdown thing, because how could we possibly afford it? Which makes it conceivable that if we'd never done the lockdown in the first place, it might have been the better way to go. But now we're on this road, we're stuck with it, I suppose. 03456. I wonder if I'm pointless to be reading out the number because we're rapidly running out of time. Let's see if I can fit in Chipping Norton. Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah.
Hello.
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I just think that, when we open restaurants, I think it's going to have to be like, a booked service. So that there's a certain amount of people in the restaurant, and they've got a certain amount of time, and then when they finish, they're done. And the next lot
like a reservation, you mean?
Pardon?
Like a reservation.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, but you said that as though you just invented a new concept of eating out.
Well, no, obviously it's already been invented, but I think it's a good way to do things.
A reservation, yeah. I have no reservation about reservations, if that's any
like, take, for instance, Nando's, they're always fully booked, so they're going to have to take a stance here and say, well, we'll only have like 15 people in our restaurant for 2 hours, and then when there's 2 hours are up, they chuck them out and the next lot come in.
Can they not just invite them politely to leave? Do they have to actually chuck them out?
Well, you'll have to have a bodyguard. I don't know.
I guess so, yeah. Armed response, yeah.
Do you not agree?
Well, people do love that chicken, no doubt it. All right, thanks a lot, Sarah. You've given us a lot to think about. And I was wondering whether you actually had a reservation. Do you have a reservation? No. Just burst in on the off chance that we had a slot. And I guess we could fit you in right at the end. Coincidentally. £16.2 billion. Wow, it almost makes me want to run away to a tax haven, just thinking of that number. We pay all of the tax that is legally required in every jurisdiction in which we do business. Meanwhile, back in the real world, masses of people, well, I don't know, maybe it's not the real world at all. Is this real life or am I hallucinating? Masses of people gathered in London's Hyde Park to protest against the coronavirus lockdown while brandishing signs reading, "I will not be masked." That was not the only sign. There was the particularly bright soul who was carrying a banner so badly written that it started trending on Twitter. In fact, it still is. Hours later, he meant to write, "I am a free man, I am not a number," which was wrong for a start, because the quote from the Prisoner TV series is, "I am not a number, I am a free man." So it was round the wrong way to start with. But planning, not his uppermost skill, he ran out of room for the first line. So he wrote, "I am a free," and then intended to put man on the line below. But he didn't put it at the left-hand side. He put it underneath "I am," put it on the right-hand side, and then thought, maybe I should put the rest of it on, and then presumably remembered that they did have another half, and then he wrote, "I am not," in front of man, and a number on the third line, so it read, "I am a free, I am not a man, I am not man a number." And he was displaying this like he could not have been prouder of his work. That's what we're dealing with here, the intelligence level of an adjustable spanner. And at that gathering of minds, 19 people were arrested, 10 given on-the-spot fines during a protest against coronavirus restrictions in Hyde Park. Not restrictions in Hyde Park, but, that's where they were, complaining about the restrictions. Among them, Jeremy Corbyn's brother, Piers, 73. You could spot him because he was the one bellowing nonsense through a loudhailer. Maybe I should be more specific. He was the one who looked like a wizard bellowing nonsense through a loudhailer. I'm amazed he knew which end to shout into. He was later seen being removed in handcuffs after earlier holding a sign which read, "End lockdown now, free NHS to save those it's left behind." Whatever that means. I read it several times, I've still got no idea. Corbyn was taken away after showing up with a megaphone and proclaiming 5G and the coronavirus pandemic were linked. Calling it a pack of lies to brainwash you and keep you in order. Well, if that's the plan, it doesn't seem to be working, does it? He also said vaccination is not necessary and that 5G towers will be installed everywhere, adding 5G enhances anyone who's got illness from COVID so they work together. Whatever that means. The Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lawrence Taylor said it was disappointing that a relatively small group in Hyde Park came together to protest the regulations. He's not angry, he's just disappointed. Disappointed that it was in clear breach of guidance, putting themselves and others at risk of infection. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lawrence said, officers once again took a measured approach and tried to engage the group to disperse. They clearly had no intention of I should do this with the police voice. They clearly had no intention of doing so, so it did result in 19 people being arrested and a further 10 being issued with a fixed penalty notice. And you couldn't fail to notice that the police weren't wearing any masks, though, and neither were the numpties that they were corralling. I'm no doctor, but it would not be totally unsurprising if there was a spike in cases amongst those people at the rally and among the people who know the people at the rally. David Sampson, 50, who said he works in finance, told the PA news agency he came because, quotes, "I never thought I'd see in my generation the suppressing of civil rights over a fake virus." Wow, the stupid is strong with some of these people. Another attendee held aloft a sign showing a Doctor Who Dalek with the addition "ex-vaccinate," whatever that means. While others read tracking and chipping theories linked to the outbreak of the virus. Yeah, apparently Bill Gates wants to install a chip in all of our brains for the purpose of... I have no idea. Do you? Do any of the people that were there? Bill Gates seems to be at the uppermost of their concerns. Well, at least it's not George Soros. They're taking a break on you, George Soros. They're all about Bill Gates now. London wasn't the only site of the lockdown protests, as people also gathered in other major cities, including but not limited to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Southampton and Nottingham. In Cardiff, A similar protest in Butte Park in the city centre saw 2 people attend, while nearby Heath Park in the city saw no one show up. 0 people. Sheeple. The 2 protesters in Butte Park, who called themselves Paul and Bob, turned up with a dossier about the alleged connection between 5G and coronavirus. It's a super secret dossier that only they have been able to gain access to. Because, that makes sense. The pair had travelled 40 miles from Bristol and said lockdown is a breach of our civil liberties. They've travelled 40 miles to complain about being locked down. Does any of this make any sense yet? They said it's a big experiment to see if the government can control us. We're going to be the next North Korea. Well, our dear leader certainly looks like Kim Jong-un, at least in silhouette. There's that. The gatherings were due to take place across Britain and are said to have been organised by the UK Freedom Movement Group, not to be confused with the UK Freedom Movement Group, an organisation of the exact same name who wish to distance themselves from the other lot because they're not the right sort of eccentric. And all that is amusing and appears to be concerned citizens getting together of their own accord, working to forge a movement from the ground up, unless they are being manipulated by the super-rich right-wingers that are funding the exact same thing in America. This hasn't come out of nowhere. You're being played like puppets, people. This is from the New York Times from the 22nd of April. The Tea Party, you remember the Tea Party? They were formed after America elected its first black president, and they used a series of healthcare town hall meetings to spur angry Republicans to oppose the Affordable Care Act as a socialist takeover of American medicine. Little matter that it was modelled on a plan devised by Mitt Romney, a Republican, when he was the governor of Massachusetts. Now, a Tea Party co-founder is using the same tactics and the same phony claims to stir his followers to protest against governors seeking to mitigate the COVID-19 death toll by closing businesses and banning public gatherings. The legend that the Tea Party was a spontaneous uprising took hold and continues to be peddled, and as we face Tea Party 2.0, let's not be fooled again. The protests playing out now have the same feel as the Tea Party protests, aided by right-wing activists and Republican mega-donor billionaires, the Koch brothers, and others too. And with good reason. Early evidence suggests they are not organic, but a brush fire being stoked by some of the same people and the money that built the Tea Party. And there's one name in all this that keeps cropping up. The first protest against the coronavirus lockdowns was by the Michigan Conservative Coalition and the Michigan Freedom Fund, whose chairman manages the vast financial investments of Dick and Betsy DeVos, who is the billionaire who is America's education secretary appointed by Donald Trump. A Koch brothers ally and a Trump advisor boasted that he has been working behind the scenes with a conservative donor who agreed to cover bail and legal fees for demonstrators who get arrested for defying Wisconsin's virus protective measures. Others were providing legal assistance as well. You go out, you protest, and we'll cover your legal fees if you get arrested, they say. This is called astroturfing because it has the appearance of a grassroots movement, but it's actually fake, as in AstroTurf. Then there's a private face group called Reopen North Carolina, has retained the legal services of a Wisconsin law firm whose clients include Donald Trump. The firm is well known for its work with dark money groups that waged wars on unions. Then there's the Convention of States, established in 2015, with a big contribution from the conservative hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer. That group recruits activists at gun shows and is promoting the protests online. So the campaign to open America flows from the super-rich and their front groups, just as, I suspect, the campaign to open Britain does. The consequences are already startling, says the New York Times. 1 week after a Kentucky protest, the state experienced its largest spike in coronavirus cases. Those fanning the flames include Donald Trump and Fox News hosts in America. The Rupert Murdoch TV news channel that basically just holds a megaphone up to Donald Trump's mouth. And Trump and Fox News hosts are unlikely to get burned by infection themselves, even though they may be goading their followers to risk their health by attending mass demonstrations. Liberate Michigan, Donald Trump wrote on Twitter in all caps. And his supporters arrived in vast numbers, armed to the teeth. There's a picture of one guy with an anti-tank rocket launcher who's gone in to order a sandwich in a cafe. What do these people think they look like? America is now facing three calamities: a deadly contagion, a capricious president, and a well-funded right-wing infrastructure willing to devalue human life in pursuit of its political agenda. Some very rich men and women are making this medical disaster worse through their reckless bellows, inflaming people to demand that states open now, no matter how many lives that costs. Same in America, same here. Wherever America goes, we seem destined to follow, despite the fact that we can see how daft the route they're taking is. Just seeing the weather forecast for the week coming up. Oh, wow, it's going to be fantastic. Unless it isn't where you are living. If you're living in Glasgow, then I would expect the usual. But I think for most other people, it's going to be, so warm. It's like blooming summer outside. And everybody's going to want to go to the beach or somewhere pretty and beautiful. And the people who live there say, please don't come anywhere that's pretty and beautiful. As though people would instead go to, I don't know, Birmingham. No offence. Actually, I like Birmingham. The centre of Birmingham is quite nice. But passing it on the motorway, going to Wales, doesn't look that nice to me. Nobody's going to want to go there for a day trip. They're going to want to go to the beach. And the police are stopping them, turning them back. Headline in the Mail Online, but officer, I'm allowed to go to the beach. Apparently not. Police stop day trippers heading for Brighton as 15 million sun worshippers are predicted to defy beauty spot police to stay away and enjoy 70-degree temperatures in the first weekend since lockdown was eased. And it's just going to get warmer and warmer and warmer this week. And there are going to be refuseniks out there. It does seem a bit weird that you can't go to the beach, doesn't it? Here's calling Swansea. Hello, Val.
Oh, hello, Nick. Hi. Right, I'm talking about the wearing masks. Up to now, I have felt, probably, with caution, that I'm a little bit better off than not having any face covering. And, of course, I hear that the experts are in two minds, because earlier on LBC, there was a virologist who was actually... he's actually a consultant to Cambridge University, and I will take the risk that he was saying is involved in wearing a mask, and that is that you sort of have to be careful how you take it off, because in a way, if something is on the outside of the mask, then you're kind of disturbing that, etc. And he said that people who wear surgical masks, they have to be taught how to take them off. Now, the thing was, I thought, well, fair enough. When I go out, I know that. I've learned I'm careful how I take it off. I then don't disturb it very much. I put it straight into a bag until I come home, and then I clean it.
Yeah.
And of course,
maybe you should burn them, Val, for extra caution. But always take them off your face before setting light.
But what he said was...
That's my medical recommendation to you.
Right. Now, what he said was that, of course, so the way to look at this is, if there's nothing on there, no harm is done. But if something is on there, well, that would have gone on my face anyway, and nobody is saying, wash your hands down your face, are they?
See, I think that if you've got something on your face, you're less likely to touch your face. I mean, you're less likely to stick your fingers in your mouth or up your nose or wherever else, any of your other facial holes.
Well, what do you think
if you're wearing not remotely interested in anything I'm saying. If you've got a mask on, you're less likely to touch your face, Val. Your beautiful face.
Exactly. So so once you've taken, if you don't have it, or once if you don't have it, and something is on your face, then you are likely to touch your face, and you won't even be alerted to anything being there. And I'm coming to another point, Nick, actually, and that is that at the end of the conversation, he threw away this like a throwaway line, I thought. This is apparently that the purpose of masks, I mean, I see it as a help to myself, but it is seen as the benefit to those around you, okay? And I don't mind if that's the case as well. But
it's
what
wearing a mask.
He then said was, that if you're, and when I've nailed people with masks, I've been quite confident, so I thought, that, I can't have their germs. But he said that if you have a mask with a valve, because, a lot of people who can get those, I suppose, would find them more comfortable. Then if they're coughing, then it comes straight out. And then, of course, if you need one like that, then you will have their germs. And, of course, you're not even aware of it then.
It might give you false, apart from anything else, it might give you false confidence. If you're wearing a mask, you might feel as though you are not impregnable. You are, what's the word?
Invulnerable.
You won't be... Yeah, you're invulnerable. It's exactly, but that's not the case. I know a doctor who got infected because the the mask that he was using didn't come with specific instructions. I mean, you would think that it's a fairly simple thing, but he was fooled by this, as were his colleagues, and there was an almost invisible valve that had no instructions as to what to do with it. And as he was intubating a patient, they coughed on him, and it went through this valve that he had not closed, and he actually got the virus.
Okay, well, apparently it works in reverse, that if you're near somebody with a mask, now I thought if I was near anybody with a mask, I should be safe, because this is why they're saying everyone is out there that is the purpose of the mask, to protect others, so other people are expecting that kind of protection. But of course, he's saying that if the person wears a valve, then everything goes through out from them. So, I mean, that's, I think, got to be now, somehow or other, I wouldn't even know how to recognise somebody wearing a mask with a valve. So now it
wouldn't really make any difference, because they're not perfectly sealed, and I would just assume that even if somebody's wearing a mask, that they are riddled with the disease, and you could catch it from them if you go anywhere near them.
Right.
I've had a mask for a good long while, but I haven't actually worn it out in public yet.
Right.
Which seems, on reflection, a fantastically stupid thing to
I thought you would have been
but,
more cautious.
Yeah, but no, I think,
you are generally,
I think there's a lot of feeling among people that this is something that somebody else gets. Even now, even with the constant drip of figures and statistics that we're being assailed with on a daily basis from the people behind their podium, I think that people still think, oh, this is something that other people get. This is not me. I mean,
I don't think
I won't start kissing strangers or anything, but if I keep my feet behind the line at the queue for the supermarket, I'll be fine. But
I don't think that, though.
No, obviously not.
No.
What kind of a mask have you got there, Val?
I'm somebody who thinks I'm likely to be the one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
anyway,
well,
just to say this now about the mask situation, I'll be a bit wary of being near people with masks.
Yeah, be wary of being near anybody, with or without a mask.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Right, good luck. Keep your eyes peeled. Thanks a lot, Val. Keep your eyes tightly closed if you're within coughing distance of anybody at all. I hold my breath when I walk past people now. That's my contribution to my own personal health. Holding my breath. You can breathe out, just don't breathe in. 0345 6060 973. Let's have Lewisham. Hello, Jane.
Hello, Nick. In these dismal times, you are just so humorous. I don't know how you manage it, you know?
Yeah,
you're
mentally
very good.
Shut myself off from the misery and the pain. I just ignore it, pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, mind you, it's a bit better now. We can get to the beach. I was down the beach today. I've been down the beach 3 times this week. I went down to Little Stone. Yes, as soon as boys said we could go to the beach, I was at the beach. I went to Dover first of all, and then I went to Sheerness, and then today I went down to Littlestone, Greatstone, but you couldn't get into Canberra, and you couldn't get into Dungeness, right? Dungeness, have you been there? It's a weird place. But I thought to myself, what you blocked us off from Dungeness for? You know what I mean? Because the whole country's weird now, isn't it? You know, and but you can get to the beach easily, but not.
Well, you might be able to get on a road that goes towards it, but if you approach it in any great numbers, the police are going to stop you and turn you back. They were doing that in Brighton. That just seems that doesn't make much sense to me. How can you catch this thing by being on a beach? Beaches are windy. Beaches are vast, open expanses where you can certainly get further away from somebody than you can in the aisle of a supermarket.
Yeah. Brighton is a favourite, isn't it? But, you know, like if you, like...
Well, it's because it's an hour from London on the train. It's the nearest beach to 15 million people that live in London.
Yes. And Southend. What was Southend like?
Oh, awful.
It's quite nice.
I've only been there. It's not. That's not accurate. That's not accurate, Jane. Southend is not quite nice. There's nothing true about that statement. You're lying about that.
Southend.
That is fake news. Southend is not nice.
Oh, you can't say that. But
the best thing about Southend is they've got a pier that goes for, I think, a mile, and there's nothing there at the end when you get there. There's nothing on that pier. But
you've done some Boris walking, haven't you? We got to walk everywhere now, and we, you know, like that's it. People have got to get fit, haven't they? So that's it. You walk the end of that pier and back. That's very, very good for you.
Well, I suppose so. Yeah. Once you get to the end, then the problem is you've got to walk all the way back again, past just endless nothing.
Nothing is walking. So it's good for you.
Well, okay. If you say so. Of course, at the end of the walk, then you get an ice cream and a bag of chips, and then have a fight with a seagull. That's not necessarily very good for you. I suppose fighting with a seagull does count as exercise. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, get us a Kiss Me Quick hat when you're down there next time. All right, Jane. Thanks a lot. Cheers, my dear. 0345 6060 973. Boris Johnson is planning a war on obesity. He has seen the light. Now that he is not quite as overweight as he used to be. Of course, he dropped the weight by becoming extremely ill. And he wants us to drop the weight, not without the getting extremely ill part. He used to be Mr. I hate the nanny state. And now he has wrapped himself in the apron of a nanny. And he's about to whip us into shape, if you can believe that. This text says, walking home from the supermarket tonight, a bloke walking towards me stopped suddenly. His head went back and he did one of those wet sneezes. I did the sharpest 90-degree turn into an alleyway and I was amazed at how fast I'd moved for a 58-year-old. That is after I'd held my breath and was gasping for air 80 seconds later, says Jeremy. Yeah, you thought you were a slow-moving heffalump. Turns out you were Speedy Gonzales. Last time I was in the building, in the studio, there's unusually for the studio that I work in, there's a window at the end. And I held my breath to walk the length of that studio, which is, I don't know, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It's about 15 foot, something like that. To open the window at the end without breathing in the air in that sealed studio. Blimey, it's incredibly difficult to hold your breath for 15 paces and then 15 back again to get out of that room. I thought I was going to pass out. So don't try this at home. Keep breathing. That's my expert medical advice. Beverly, Mike.
Hi, Nick, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. I I'm sure you and everyone else has been comparing how South Korea's been doing with Corona compared to the rest of the world and ourselves. And one of the interesting things I noticed with the debate that's going on over our schools at the minute is that South Korea have not sent their children back into their schools.
Yeah.
So they think, and they're doing pretty well overall, so they're not daft. What they have done, though, is they've organised their school days online. So, like, they have registration, and then they have class 1, and a little break, and then another teacher will come on and deliver class 2, interactive, then they'll have a lunch, and register again for the afternoon, a couple of classes, and then school finishes for the day. But they've chosen not to send their kids into school, because they think it would be a danger of getting the R over 1 again.
Well, there's other countries that are doing similarly well that are sending their kids to school. Like Denmark is doing that, and Germany is doing that. They've done particularly well with this virus. I think New Zealand are sending theirs back. They've done spectacularly well.
Yeah. I was just pointing out that South Korea have decided not to, and everyone's holding them up as a sort of prime thing. South Korea basically based their sort of strategy on sort of hard work, meticulous attention to detail, prompt leadership, and we've got Boris.
Well, their education system is very, very good, apparently. Ours is, but I think ours tends to creep up the list because of the excellence of a few of our top universities, and perhaps the best of our schools, most of which are private. But if you look at other countries that have that are less, where wealth is concentrated less in private education, and I think that South Korea is right up there at the tip of topmost.
That is a factor. Can I just have one last point on respirators?
Okay.
You're talking about respirators. I mean, your idea about respirators would be brilliant, but I used to work in health and safety, by the way. Respirators that have good quality, renewable filters cost between 20 and 100 quid a piece, which is pretty expensive. But the other thing is that the world decided to go with respirator masks, which are incredibly cheaper. So the appropriate filters for respirators are only available to the military. So we couldn't, without a complete change of manufacturing, have gone for respirators with changeable, suitable filters. If we had, your idea would be brilliant, but that just isn't the way the industry's gone.
Just to recap, which is something I said yesterday, was that if we just gave every adult in the land a respirator, not a mask, a respirator, because masks, as far as I'm aware, are to prevent you giving what you've got to somebody else, whereas a respirator protects you from what other people have got. So it's a much more substantial piece of kit. But I don't think that's right when you say that only the military can get what is it?
It is, Nick. Only the military can get suitable levels of filters for the brilliant respirators that you're talking about. The rest of the world have gone on to what are called respirator masks.
Stop shouting at me. God, you're loud.
Sorry, Nick.
On the desk. Turn these callers down a bit. They're distorting. I don't think that's right. I mean, I've seen them on on building sites. They're not in stock, but they have them, and they have the description of them, and it seems to be the same kind of thing. And if they cost between £20 and £100 each per person, if the government bought 40 million of them, they could probably get a discount.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are the right bit of kit to go on your face, but the filters that would work effectively against viruses aren't manufactured. They don't have the filters for them. But had we gone into production and made them, the idea would have worked brilliantly.
Right, but Boris, right. Okay, thanks, Mike. 0345 6060 973. South Korea is held up as an exemplar of how to deal with this, but I think New Zealand is done really, really well. And it might be educational to actually contemplate how they've done it. This is from LondonEconomic.com. New Zealand has announced that it's halted the community transmission of COVID-19, wiping out the virus on the island. It is there no more, according to the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. About 500,000 workers across the island are set to return to work this week, with retailers beginning to open their doors. New cases of coronavirus in the country have been in single figures for several days, with just 5 new infections announced on Monday, and New Zealand has reported fewer than 1,500 cases of the coronavirus, and at the time of writing, 19 deaths. Now, geography has certainly had a hand in allowing New Zealand to win the battle against the virus, but it's Jacinda Ardern's swift and decisive leadership during the crisis that has won the most plaudits, with many commentators holding up her government's actions as the model for tackling the virus. Not so many people holding up our government's actions as a model for tackling the virus. On the 23rd of March, as Boris Johnson was instructing Britons that they would have to stay at home, the New Zealand government committed to an elimination strategy. Not content with flattening the curve or mitigating the spread of the disease, Ardern announced her intention to completely clear New Zealand of the virus. The Prime Minister immediately put the country into a mass home quarantine for a month. Unlike some Western countries, however, this move was seen as little more than a means to an end, buying the government time to ramp up critical measures needed to clamp down on the virus. And whereas the British government had been lambasted for its failures on testing and its flirtation with herd immunity, Ardern's government used the breathing space afforded by lockdown to quarantine anyone arriving at New Zealand's borders. Still, we're not doing that. There's people pouring in from the virus hotspots all over the world, China and America, for instance. And we're doing absolutely nothing to check any of them, to see where they're going or where they've been or what they might be secreting about their person. New Zealand expanded testing and contact tracing, which we still haven't started. A measure that experts agree will be crucial to stopping a second outbreak should a lockdown be lifted. And I was wondering aloud yesterday, what on earth are we going to do in the very likely event of a second wave? We're going to go through this again? Well, we've barely got an economy left anymore. We couldn't possibly go into lockdown twice, could we? The contact tracing also prioritised case isolation and quarantine of contacts, which academics said would allow New Zealand to stamp out chains of transmission. If you don't know where it is, how can you fight it? And we've got no idea where it is. It's like, you know that game that they have in America where they hang a paper donkey off a tree and it's filled with sweets, and you blindfold a kid and they have to just swing around with a bat in the air, see if they can make contact with this donkey, break it open, and all these sweets pour out. That's kind of what we're doing now. Blindfold, just swinging in the air. And despite the New Zealand government's success to date, Ardern has stressed that contact tracing, testing and the isolation of anyone with symptoms will continue, even as New Zealand edges back towards normalcy. Success doesn't mean zero COVID-19 cases, the New Zealand Prime Minister explained. It means zero tolerance. As soon as we have a case, we go in straight away, testing around that person. We're isolating them, we do our interviews, we contact trace to find all the people who have been in contact with them while they may have passed it on, and we ask them to isolate. That's how we keep stamping out COVID cases, she said. Meanwhile, we're crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. That's what it seems like to me. And you might think, well, it's easy for a rich country that has very few residents to control it. But they've got more money per person, you might think. But they don't. We are much richer than New Zealand. The UK makes way more per person per year than they do. So where's the excuse? There's no point in telling us that we're the 5th richest economy in the world all the time, unless there's some benefit that goes with that. 0345 6060 973. Terry in Orpington says, the respirator thing is fine, but what about the virus on someone's hair and someone's clothes and other places? Other places? There are other places? This says, about Southend, on sea where I live, we have the longest pleasure pier in the world. It's 1.3 miles long. At the end of the pier, there are a cafe, a lifeboat museum with a gift shop, and a train is available to go to these amenities. No, it's not. Thought I'd support the correct information on your most famous on our most famous attraction, and hope next time you go to the end you'll notice all of these. Well, okay, it's a good long while since I went to Southend, but when I went, I mean, it couldn't have been more than 20 years ago. Maybe they've improved it, no end. If there was ever a place that needed improvement, it was Southend, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Really, they'd built something at the end of it. Okay, if you say so. I'll have to take your word for it, Jeanette, because I'm never going to see it with my own eyeballs. Take a picture. Let's have Kent. Jamie.
Oh, good evening.
Jamie.
Hi, how's it going?
All right, thanks. What do you want to say?
Oh, good stuff. I went out on a walk earlier today. I went to Shakespeare Beach, and it was quite. It's in Dover. Oh. And when I was on the beach, the Coast Guard turned up, and about two riot vans, and there's a boat as well with about 50 men on it. It was like a scene out of a war film. It was quite a thing to watch.
When you said there was a boat with 50 men on, what, do you mean?
Well, and women.
Authorities, or
migrants.
Oh, okay. All right. So what happened?
Yeah, well, they got intercepted because there was like the Coast Guard there, and they took them off and kind of asked us to move away.
Right.
But yeah, it was quite. Afterwards, I could have done with a pint, really, watching it, but the pubs are closed.
Yeah, but the pubs are shut. Yeah. Well, hopefully you recorded it on your phone, because everyone's a reporter these days.
There's some clips on YouTube as well at the moment.
So when they said move away, did you move away so that you couldn't see it anymore, or what?
Well, we just left anyway. There's nothing we could.
Right, nothing to see here. Please move along. And so you did.
No, but with the previous,
with the previous,
caller, the lady saying at Brighton, that's a lovely stretch there. You can do like a nice walk along the coast there up to Rossendale. Yeah. Would recommend that. But,
okay, all right. I'll put it on my list. Thanks a lot, Jamie. Just as soon as we're allowed. Yeah. The police turning people away. Nearly half of the journeys made by car will be no more than 10 miles, according to the RAC. 6% of... No. This is all just stats about how far people are going to go. But this was the story. Police are already stopping day trippers heading to the beach, despite changes to government rules giving them permission to, as 15 million leisure trips are expected to be made this weekend. There is a lot more traffic on the road, I've noticed that. Seaside towns and national parks are worrying about the are worrying about the risk of an outbreak of coronavirus if city dwellers rush to parks and beaches as they have been shielded from the disease so far. Well, not really. It's everywhere. I mean, you can repel tourists at the border if you like, but it's not going to stop people from your villages leaving and then coming back again. I mean, unless you're just going to build a wall like Donald Trump, then it's going to invade your area sooner or later, the virus. A survey of 1,317 drivers conducted by the RAC suggests that 1 in 5 will drive up to 10 miles to reach their destination. Everybody wants to go out and lie on a beach. This is something I never really understood. Lying in the sun, like frying yourself. It always just seemed like pain to me. I prefer it when it's a little bit cool and when the beach hasn't got any sand on it, just pebbles, because, you know, sand gets everywhere. And you can sit watching the waves come in and enjoying a six-pack. Not taking off all of your clothes and lying on a towel and being roasted. That just doesn't appeal to me at all. I just don't get it. Let's have Lewisham, Barry.
Hello there. Good evening, Nick.
Barry.
I think we've handled this situation in the worst way possible. I think if there was a case study for how not to handle a pandemic, I think we would be the case example, apart from America, that is. What we've done...
Yeah, I was going to say, apart from America. There is always America, fortunately.
Yeah, we've got Trump. He's always going to save us from being the most stupid country. Yeah. But, I mean, I've got a long-term health condition, right? And I read a book at the beginning, and I spoke to the doctors, and they all said to me, the medical advice, said to me, I've got to learn how to cope with the disease. I've got to have a management strategy, a coping strategy, as to how we're going to cope with it. Yeah.
What did he mean by cope with the disease? Did he mean cope with the lockup or cope with actually catching the disease?
Well, the lockup was never actually coping with the disease. That was burying our heads in the sand. I mean, for example, there is HIV. It doesn't mean you don't have sex. It simply means you mitigate catching HIV by taking appropriate steps. We didn't do anything of that sort. Yeah. So there was COVID-19. Did we try and avoid it? No, we didn't. We didn't screen anybody in January. We didn't close the airports. We didn't stop it coming into the country. And then when it came here, we just stopped doing anything. So ultimately, what Boris has done is ruin the economy. In an effort to basically mitigate his own problems. He created a problem with his, nonchalance. And so with this, he's now trying to flap his arms and fix it. And it's just breaking more and more. What we've now done is we've released a lockdown. We've not got any comprehensive testing strategy. And when I mean that, for example, the school children, they're going back to school, well, test their families. That's a good start. Test their families, make sure that those groups can integrate back into society. Then you can move on to the next group and so on and so forth. This is a strategy. Do you know what I mean? But I am not at all surprised. I don't really call much anymore because it's so exhausting. We knew that the man was a clown. That was obvious. Everyone knew he was a clown. When you employ a clown, you have a circus. Right now, the country is pretty much a circus. Now you've got these stupid idiots, I would call them worse, stupid idiots, anti-lockdown guys. Jeremy Corbyn's brother, I don't know what the hell he's doing there. I don't know what... I mean, he's the man who doesn't believe in climate change either. I don't know.
What I found interesting on Twitter was that people are using Jeremy Corbyn's brother to attack Jeremy Corbyn. I know. The one has got nothing to do with the other. They may be in the same family, but you can't criticise Jeremy Corbyn for what his brother does.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn was part of the government that was questioning the Tories and Boris when he went on holiday on the 23rd of January. They were questioning, why are you not screening people at the border? Why are people allowed to walk in from Wuhan and are only getting a leaflet? That's all you're giving them is a leaflet.
It's still happening today. I mean, there was this big story in the Mail yesterday about, and the headline is, Flying into the Height of Madness, no checks on illegal BA holidaymakers leaving, and none coming back as thousands arrive every day. No wonder we're the sick man of Europe, they say. I thought that Boris Johnson was all about closing our borders, taking control. And it's the opposite of that in the worst possible time.
The thing is, we can't be surprised because this is the man who built the Garden Bridge, which doesn't exist, the man who put the cable car up, which nobody uses. It goes from nowhere to nowhere. This is the man who was supposed to do the security for the Olympics. That was the only thing he had to do, and he messed it up and the army had to come in. Why are we surprised that this it is so willfully, I don't know if it's willfully bad or it's just he's that stupid. Some people expect him to have some sort of Damascene conversion when he's come out of hospital after nearly killing himself, and now he wants us. Well,
it was priceless. I mean, I'm glad that he didn't suffer more than he did, and that he's all right now. I mean, wouldn't wish ill on the man. But the level that we're talking about here is when he boasted about going into a hospital full of people that had this virus and telling us that he shook every hand that came his way. And then promptly fell ill. Who could have predicted that?
But mate, and the thing is, this should all be a moment of reflection for the entire country to say, oh my goodness, what have we voted into power? This man and his cronies, none of them have got a lick of sense between them. Do you know what I mean?
I think that we are all living in Donald Trump's world now, and that's not going to happen. What is actually happening is people are becoming more entrenched in their views because, and I'll paraphrase what James O'Brien tweeted the other day, people refuse to acknowledge, or people on the right now refuse to acknowledge the cultists, the people in that cult. They refuse to acknowledge that Boris Johnson has been wrong about any of this, because that might imply that he could have been wrong about that, as in Brexit.
Exactly. It's the typical thing that happens to a person who has been the victim of a con artist. They will not believe that they've been conned.
No, too much loss of faith. This is the problem with Trump in America. I mean, apart from they both have that sort of, we don't want foreigners around here, there's that sort of undercurrent with both characters, which plays to a certain element really, really well. I mean, it plays so well, it's amazing that everybody doesn't use that all the time, because it's almost guaranteed to get you in.
It's all it works. It's all it works. And you don't do anything else.
With both of them, there is a digging in of heels and a refusal to believe anything negative about the dear leader, which is really alarming territory to be in. And I think if you look at a thing called The History Channel, then there's echoes of this all over it.
This is radicalisation.
24 hours a day.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
All
This
right.
is radicalisation.
Excellent work. Thanks a lot, mate. Calm down. Chin up. It might never happen. Oh, no, that's right. It already has. Text and emails and such. This says, it might interest it might interest you to know that New Zealand has more sheep than people. Oh, that's offensive. Sheep are human beings too, you know. He said, or she says, the area available for people to keep their distance may have had a bearing on why the virus didn't spread. We're packed like sardines in the UK, says D. Rubbish. No, we're not. Leave any city, and in about 5 minutes, all you see is green. All this nonsense about we're full. Please. No, we're not. Not even remotely. I think there's only about, I can't remember exactly how much, so I'm going to make it up. About 95% of this country has not been built on, more or less. I think that's about right. And as for being packed in like sardines, I think you'll find that the virus spreads in cities. And cities in New Zealand are just as full of people as cities are in this country. This says, listening to you from Christchurch in New Zealand, whilst I don't agree with many of her policies, I have to say that the measures taken by the government have clearly worked so far. The lockdown was tough, and we need to be mindful around contact tracing. A smaller population helps, but ultimately clear advice and a strong public buy-in have seen positive results. We also have public service announcements on nearly every commercial break and public broadcasts reminding us what we can and can't do. Says Wayne in New Zealand. Right. Well, we have public broadcasts and they are very, very clear. You can't take fault with those. There's nothing but clarity. But the rest of it, not so much. I mean, contact tracing, we still haven't started that yet. And there is doubt about whether we'll be able to. I mean, Matt Hancock, the well-known health expert, said that he's going to hit his target of hiring enough people to trace the contacts of coronavirus sufferers next week. But that might not necessarily be so. Doubt has been cast over whether Matt Hancock is going to hit his target of hiring enough people to trace the contacts of coronavirus sufferers next week, after ministers said that less than 10% of the workforce had been recruited. 10%! And they're supposed to be starting next week. But Matt Hancock has registered his certainty that he will be able to announce that he has met his target, probably by simply saying it out loud, regardless of whether it has happened or not. We're all living in Donald Trump's world now. Just because it's not actually true doesn't mean to say it's not a fact. But Downing Street's claimed it's on course to recruit 18,000 people it needs by next week. 18,000 people by next week, each of which will have been trained up to their eyeballs. Experts they'll be. They're on course to recruit the 18,000 people, said Downing Street. It's a beautiful phrase, that, on course. As in, how far have you got to sail before you get to the other side of the ocean? Well, we haven't actually left the dock yet, but we're on course. Brandon Lewis, the Northern Ireland Secretary, said that 1,500 or 8.5% of the 18,000 people needed had been hired. They need 18,000 people. They've only had 15,000 applications. So even if it's 100% approval rate, which it won't be, the government is still going to fail. It's the only thing they are consistently successful at. Failing. The Prime Minister's spokesman said Mr. Lewis's figures, the Brandon Lewis, Northern Ireland Secretary, Northern Ireland, he said their figures were out of date and that significantly more tracers had been hired, said the Prime Minister's spokesperson, but he was unable to say precisely how many. Well, I don't know. So they asked the Department of Health for Social Care, or the Department for Health and Social Care. And the Department for Health and Social Care refused to disclose the latest total. So let's assume they are doing fantastically well, shall we? No? And tracers are just one element. There's the contact tracing app element too, and the nationwide testing program. And we know the nationwide testing program is going so well that they had to lie to us about how many that they were doing. And the app they chose was not the one made by actual experts at Google and Apple. We went our own exceptional British way and invented our own exceptional British app, which, to no one's amazement, didn't work. And so now, after wasting all that time, which seems to be a theme with the response to the virus here, wasting time, the government are now considering using Google and Apple after all. God, I don't wish to be cruel, but the depth of the talent pool in number 10 is so shallow you couldn't drown in it. So we better hope that they eventually get their act together, because otherwise we won't be allowed out to play. Ever. The Royal College of GPs called on the Health Secretary to set out a clear plan for coronavirus testing, arguing that GPs need to know which groups to prioritise, the role of the new antibody test, and how they should be testing people. Professor Martin Marshall, the group's chairman of the Royal College of General Practitioners, said he was looking for a targeted plan. I mean, does anybody have a plan? Anything at all? We'll take something sketched out on a napkin with a crayon at this point. There's also a problem of a lack of knowledge among us lot who will have to use these complicated pieces of kit. I mean, you might think in your techno bubble that anybody knows how to use an app, but it ain't necessarily true. See, if this app is going to work, they're going to need a high take-up rate. Going to need to be a lot of us using it if it's actually going to produce positive results. And what it does is it aims to use smartphone Bluetooth connections to record the proximity and duration of physical encounters between people who have downloaded it. You download it, you tell them what your status is, whether you've had it or you haven't had it, which of course will require testing, which we haven't got, but we'll just pass over that unfortunate fact and to talk about the apps themselves. So if two people come into close contact with each other, their phones will recognise that, and then they'll either alert you personally or they'll alert the authorities in general. And so you can then be followed to see who you then meet and so on. Officials have privately calculated, however, that exponential benefits are expected if more than 50% of the population download and use it. Unfortunately, and this may surprise you, MPs have been warned that 4 million people in the UK have never even used the internet. That's about 10% of all adults. How do they get to see cute pussycat and puppy dog clips? Are people sending them on video cassette? And on top of 4 million people never having even used the internet, a further 7 million people have used the net but have very basic skills, like not knowing how to open an app, for instance. Blimey. Turns out we do need education. We don't need no thought control. Get Roger Waters on the phone. He's going to have to rewrite that song. And it's worth remembering that the reason that the government didn't go with the Google and the Apple tracing app was that it held the information that it gleaned on where you went and who you met on your own phone, secretly. The government app was designed to collate all of your information and store it centrally on a government computer system. And there may be no sinister reason for doing that, but try telling that to the people with placards that are creeping out of the shadows to shout at telephone masts. Jeanette says, as I mentioned in my previous email, there was a previous email? She says, I live in Southend-on-Sea. Regarding the government news that the public can get on their bikes, the government meant this to be done instead of getting on public transport. But now every idiot in Southend seems to be on their bike, on the pavement, running us pedestrians down as they whiz by us at 60 to 90 miles an hour. Maybe just as well you don't come to Southend. Well, that's put the tin hat in it for me, Jeanette. This says, did you just say right cultists won't acknowledge Boris Johnson as being wrong because then they'd have to acknowledge Brexit might have been wrong too? Sorry, I guess I'm one of those that forgot who was Prime Minister when British people voted to leave Europe. What? I used to think you were quite funny, but really you're somewhat of a hypocritical moron, says Justin. I bet Justin's face is as purple as his rosette. It doesn't never mind who was Prime Minister when the British people voted to leave Europe. You can't possibly imagine that just because the Prime Minister changed, that the power and the money behind the party have all changed too, Justin. And this says, I live in the New Forest, and some parts were gridlocked today, including the road with the longest name in the country. Rhinefield Arboretum Ornamental Drive. Wow. Is that the name of a road? Also, large groups of people, obviously from different households, out together, says John in Somerset. How do you know they were from different households? I do hope you weren't interacting with them. Liverpool, Tommy.
Okay.
Yes, Tommy.
It might sound a bit trivial, but I think the hairdressers and the barbers should open, especially even just for us two alone. I think we could open them to you. No, because the pair of us are looking like Roswell.
Yeah, well, I'm looking like Catweasel, so I take your rud hole and I turn it up to 10.
Do you think they should open?
I badly want a haircut, but I don't want to have to sit underneath the breath of someone who's been attending to anybody before me in large numbers.
Well, there's no way you're going to get a perm unless you go in, is there? I think they should do. I'll bring everyone's, personnel up. I think they're like football. I think when people get a haircut, they're dead excited, aren't they?
Well, are they?
Well, they are, yeah, especially when you go in. No, to be honest, I think you should need a perm. But to be honest, I think you should open them, to be honest. And,
a perm would make me look like Gilbert O'Sullivan. That is not a look that I want to pursue.
I think you look more like Harpo Marx. Well, but to be honest, you shoot your hair long, to be honest. I'll tell you what, there's not much in it between you and Bobby Charlton. No, to be honest, I need my haircut and next to you. I'll have to talk serious.
And you, thanks a lot, mate.
I'll have to talk serious, Nick.
Is that gone or what? I don't know. Can't tell. 0345 6060 973. Yeah, it's going to get to the point. I mean, I've resisted up to this point, cutting my own hair, but there's going to get to a point where it's just it's unavoidable. Especially as the weather's going to get hot. We've seen how hot it's going to be next week. It's going to be almost 80 degrees, so they said. Wow. And this hair is not going to get cooler. Not the bigger it gets, the hotter it's going to get. I won't be able to stand it anymore. And I can't shave my head. I mean, that would be the easy way out, wouldn't it? That would be a chicken's way out. Can't shave my head because that it would be too much face. I'd be all face. I'm not sure that I could pull off a shaved head. I'm not Bruce Blummin Willis, you know. I have to have my hair styled in such a way as it takes the attention off my face. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I've thought about getting a pair of scissors and some thinning shears, because that seems like that would be the easiest thing to do. Thin it out with the shears, because you're not actually committing yourself to a line like with your fringe or anything like that, or over your ears. You're just thinning it out. Isn't that the easiest thing to do? Any experts out there want to pass on some tips? 0345 6060 973. Let's have Huddersfield. Adam.
Hello, Nick. How's it going, my friend?
All right, thanks.
You're a brilliant commentator.
Adam, can you get nearer the phone?
Yeah, can you hear me? Is that better?
No, it sounds like you're talking with your head in a bucket. Are we on speakerphone?
No. Is that better?
No.
All right. Okay. Sure.
What kind of a phone is he using there, Adam?
It's an iPhone, the latest version.
Right, without mentioning any brand names, it's an iPhone, you say. Can it also be used as a phone?
Well, I am using it as a phone.
And we're not on speakerphone. Are you sure about that?
No, absolutely not. I'm speaking into the phone.
Okay.
On your line.
I'm going to send a stern note to Apple. Must try harder. Anyway, what have you got for us, Adam?
Well, Nick, I was just going to mention something about this coronavirus epidemic. I think I was concerned about it anyway, but a recent revelation has more or less revealed that if you do get infected by the coronavirus and you generate antibodies against the virus, courtesy of your immune system, that's all well and good. But even when you recover, there are long-term implications, like thrombosis, which involves the clotting of the blood, and irreparable damage to lungs and kidney.
Well, it's not necessarily. It can happen. Apparently,
it can happen. Right? Okay. But there is a potential implication that it could it could happen, couldn't it?
Yeah, if you survive, you might not necessarily survive with all of your health intact. Yeah. But some people just blast through it. I mean, the majority of people, it doesn't really affect them very strongly one way or the other.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Nick, you're an intelligent man, and you said something a couple of weeks ago which really resonated with me, and that was raised my concern even more. You said something along the lines of, at the end of the day, we haven't really found, a proper cure for the influenza virus or HIV, and these two are both viruses. So what chance have we got in finding a cure for, the coronavirus?
Well, there's people who, like Donald Trump, are saying that we're going to get a vaccine by the end of next week, or certainly by the end of the year. It's like a miracle; it's going to disappear. But people who actually know what they're talking about have suggested that it might never find one. Might be a year and a half or 2 years away, or never.
And I think you mentioned something along the lines that we're all going to get it eventually. So, I just don't know. I mean, I'm kind of wrapping my brains as to what the best approach is. I mean, you're an intelligent man. What do you think? I mean, what do you think we should do? I mean, how do you think we should tackle this issue?
We need to invent a time machine and then go back to December and do over, because the decisions that have been made on our behalf in this country don't appear to have been the best ones, in retrospect, or even at the time we didn't much think that they were the best decisions to be made. I wonder if the entire world had just done as Sweden and not locked down, had certain measures in place to advise people to keep their distance a little bit, but keep the businesses open, then maybe the entire world would have come out of this in a better place.
Well, you've only got to look at Sweden, and regardless of the fact that they haven't actually implemented a lockdown, they're doing pretty well economically and socially as well. So,
well, we don't really know about economically yet, but my assumption, based on an endless, bottomless vat of ignorance, is that at the end of this, they will have not closed down their internal economy as we have done. I mean, they'll still be hit. They'll still take an economic hit because the rest of the world with whom they trade will be in the biggest depression in history. So they're not going to leave unscathed. But because they didn't close their restaurants, for instance, and their cafes and their cinemas and their theatres and all of this stuff where people congregate, then it will be easier for Swedes to continue doing that. Whereas I think it's going to be quite difficult to persuade Britons to come out of a 2-month lockdown and then charge into the nearest restaurant. I can't quite see that happening.
Well, we're losing like £2.4 billion a day, aren't we? Which is an astonishing rate. Are we going to have anything left at the end of all this?
Well, there's suggestions now that we're not actually going to be... we won't actually bother to pay the money back, and we'll just treat it like a war debt and pay it over, the next 40 years or 50 or 100 or however long it takes. Just pretend it doesn't exist.
God. Yeah.
I don't really understand international finance, but if you can borrow £1 trillion and pretend it doesn't exist, well, that seems like a pretty good deal to me. Where do I sign?
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent, Nick.
All right. Thanks a lot, Adam. Get yourself a new phone, all right?
No problem. Thanks, Nick.
As soon as one comes available that you can track the stars in the sky and see where planes are going just by pointing your phone at it, and you can see what the weather's going to be like next week. And it does all of those very, very exciting things. But perhaps they'll invent one that can also be used as a phone. I bet it'll happen any day now. Thanks a lot, Adam. Jeremy in Huddersfield says you could always put your long hair in bunches like girls used to do in the old days. Like a top knot, you mean? Like a samurai. Hey, I like the sound of that. No, it's a no from me. I think it's got to be thinned out. That surely is the easiest thing to do, isn't it? I mean, I have nothing to base that on other than it would seem like if you made a mistake, it would be less obvious. Because if I cut the hair around my ear and one side's way higher than the other, then you'd be able to see it straight away. But if you just thin it out all over, how could you make a mistake? This hairdressing lark's a piece of cake, he said before actually having tried it. I'm very nervous.